The exclamation point right there.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Room on the SEC defensive team before he got to Auburn. He was at Morehead State, was the OVC Defensive Player of the Year. Nice spin and finish. Tonight, Broom's got 8. He is carrying this Auburn team.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Fakes on the jump shot. He can elevate here. Crowd doesn't get the bounce. They don't get back. Deja runs the floor, which he does well. And Deja finishes.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Horn again playing with 4 fouls. 21 points tonight for State. Takes a bump and hits.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Shelstad launching deep. And Shelstad buries a 3.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Nice give back, and Jones flushes. Wells and Jones.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. A new week, and it's March Madness full throttle, starting with the play-in games or the first-round games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Some teams that got in, that some are wondering why, and then some that didn't get in, and the question might be, why not? We're going to try to break all of that down. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. I was able to go see my brothers in Florida. Had a great time with them. Back, nice to be back, and look forward to the start of the NCAA tournament. Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, and Garrett Ross running the mothership here on 365 Sports. Here are the top 4 seeds in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. This after the feat of Kyle Boone. Obviously, it's pretty obvious. Most of them, anybody there among the top 4 seeds in any of the regions that you wonder, and that means you'd have to replace them with somebody. And I got to tell you, Baylor at a 3 seed kind of surprised me. I thought they might lose traction, especially getting blown out by Iowa State, and then they hammered Houston. But any of those top 4 seeds, do you see somebody that you question among any of them?
No, I think they got the top part of it all right. I mean, there's a lot of questions about some of the other seeds in the bracket and, who's in, one of the playing games in particular lower down. But I think the top 4 were all right, especially, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of got obvious, especially after Tennessee lost so early on in the SEC tournament. It didn't matter that NC State beat North Carolina. That kind of just took Tennessee down to the 2 line. I think Auburn will be maybe the most underseeded team of all of them at 4 because they seem like they can do a whole lot more than a lot of teams can. But again, you kind of played your way into all this for everyone. So I don't have a problem with any of them.
The only thing that jumped off to me was North Carolina as a 1 seed over Iowa State initially. And then when I read the explanation of where their non-conference schedule ranked compared to Iowa State's, which Iowa State's was just horrific. I mean, like 350th or whatever it was.
I think it was in the upper 200s. Yeah.
I don't know. I
Maybe
think
worse.
I think it was actually worse. I think it was in the 300s. But regardless, that was the explanation or one of the reasons given as to why North Carolina got that nod over Iowa State, because where Iowa State was in the hundreds, North Carolina was a top 40. So you can see where that's just, you give them credit for having the better schedule, and that gets them the nod. But, Iowa State, I don't think's drowning their sorrows too much. They had a big weekend. And so, that number 2 seed will just add a little chip more to that shoulder that's already got a pretty massive chip on it, just because that's pretty much how they're engineered in Ames. And so, yeah, nothing totally shocking. I'm not an expert bracketologist, so I'm sure there's people who are like, that should have been a 4 instead of a 3, and I'll default to those folks who know better. But, yeah, nothing that jumps off the page. But I did think the Cyclones had a pretty good shot at the number 1, but I get it.
All right, Garrett, let me ask you this. The number 1 overall seed was UConn.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State, there were thoughts it could be a 1 seed. Craig was just bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
So if UConn's the number 1 seed, that means Iowa State was the 8th team.
Correct.
Which that was kind of a surprise, and that also might answer what the committee was doing. Again, if you're an Iowa State fan, you're pissed, you're angry. Well, go keep winning. Now, one thing, go back to that group, go back to that image one more time, and then Craig, you followed up with this. In the East region, those 4 teams all just won their tournament conference championships. Every one of them, UConn, Iowa State, Illinois, and Auburn. That was something that I think there's a separate tweet on. You don't have to use it now, Garrett, but there we are. Craig?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a loaded region. That's odd how it worked out to where you have all of the conference champs sitting right there bunched up together. Don't know how, intentional that was or how that just seemed to spit out, and that's what they ended up with. But, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some different things that you can look at and position a different way. What were you saying right before that, though? Because you wanted to show that, but I was
saying that Iowa State, we thought, or at least in discussion, that they could move up to the number 1 seed line. But they're in the same region as the number 1 overall team in the country and the number 1 overall seed in UConn. Placed in that region means that they would have been the number 4, number 2 seed to be in the UConn region.
I know what I was thinking of now. Yeah, Jeff Capel and Clemson's whining as well seem to have an impact when talking about the non-conference schedules. They're little, I won't call it a fit because it wasn't that extreme, but they're very public, and just timing-wise, the ACC suddenly wanted to speak up a bit about the Big 12 and its non-conference scheduling and its rankings and how those were formulated. And so I don't know if that got into the head of the committee or not. I know Twitter, which, hey, take it for what it's worth, but Twitter seems to think that it got into people's heads.
Jeff Capel had no place.
No, he was politicking. He was politicking for his team to get in. Yeah,
because his team was 343rd in the schedule ranking. So, he was maybe just trying to say, like, if you're going to say this about us, you have to say that about them. You can't say it for every team in the Big 12, though.
No.
I think, when you look at Baylor, Kansas, Houston, Tech, like some of these teams in particular, they had pretty good non-conference schedules. I think Kansas played 3 of the 4 1 seeds and beat 2 of them. So,
and they're the ones that are propped up as somebody who did. But if you read just some of the write-ups, that message from Jeff Capel and the Clemson coach, his name's slipping my mind. I apologize, but that is in many articles that are talking about where Big 12 teams are ranked. So I don't know if it got through to the committee or not, but it got through to some of the journalists, which isn't hard to do. You just feed them and they repeat it. But that clearly resonated, at least in the descriptions of where teams ended up. And so I can imagine a scenario where, maybe that slipped into some of the conversation with the committee and how they decided to rank some of the Big 12 teams. Again, that's not the example for every single one of them, but that is something that I've seen mentioned multiple times now in multiple write-ups ever since, the ACC had their politicking the other day. So, take that for what it's worth.
We're going to get into politicking and also those who have comments about this and that are in positions of power or not. This is an interesting tweet. Since 2002, this is something that, now read it, every team that has won the NCAA tournament in the last 21 years has been inside the top 40 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. That means you can't be 27-1 and 63 in another. This year, 12 teams in that category: UCM, UConn, Purdue, Duke, Arizona, Auburn, Houston, Creighton, Marquette, North Carolina, Colorado, Tennessee, and Nebraska. And I didn't include that because it had Nebraska, who's going to open up against A&M, and the former AD is now there. But then turn the page on yet another tweet. Since Ken Palm's analytics began in 2002, every national champion but one has been top 25 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, top 25, not 40, and that includes this list of the same teams but minus a few others: Arizona, Auburn, UConn, Creighton, Houston, Marquette, North Carolina, and Purdue, who traditionally can scare the hell out of you, a Boilermakers fan, when it comes to a tournament game. So there we are with a couple of trends, analytics, facts, figures, etc. on those are the teams that it looks like will be the one of those 8 will win the national title.
Yeah, I would say that Auburn is a 4 seed, and so they're the lowest one among all those.
Arizona's a 2 seed.
Creighton is a 3. Marquette's a 2. You've got all the 1 seeds in there. So Auburn's the lowest seed out of that who could reasonably win. Like I said before, when you watch them play, they get so aggressive defensively, and they can really get hot on going scoring streaks inside and outside with what they have. So I would be concerned. The only problem Auburn really has in this is that of all the things they could have drawn overall, they drew UConn in their side of the bracket, who is probably is obviously the number 1 overall seed, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around seeing them lose, but that's also bad news. Like, I would say that's the worst news UConn got is that Auburn is in there, and Bruce Pearl and those guys are scared of no one.
Well, Illinois, again, all those teams in that same region all just won the conference championship, which sometimes mean nothing. We'll have a stat on winning the conference championship and what it might mean when it comes to the tournament. Baylor is a top 3 seed. Now, I got to tell you, at times you wonder. Now, they had that nice run right before the end. They did win their first tournament game in Kansas City against Cincinnati. They're the only school to be a top 3 seed in each of the last 4 tournaments. So they have that nice little trend going for Scott Drew and company. In fact, here's a comment, a real quick little nugget from Scott Drew yesterday evening once the tournament bracket was unveiled.
This team finished with the number 1 strength of schedule in the country. I mean, there's 363 schools. That's like hitting the lottery to have the number 1 strength of schedule. And we went against the number 1 ranked defense in the country. So definitely been proven and battle tested. But probably the thing I'm most proud about is we're the only school that's had 4 straight top 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament. And there's a lot of great programs, a lot of great coaches, a lot of great tradition, but to be the only school to be a top 3 seed the last 4 years really is something that our administration, our fan base, our players, staff can be really proud of.
All right, so there's that. Now, what is the one thing that Baylor is struggling with besides giving up a lot of threes? Look at this stat. This is actually from the forum section, Sikkim365.com from Rifle Bear. In these games listed below, this is what the score was early, including what happened against Cincinnati and Iowa State up in Kansas City. 9-1, 10-1, 16-2, 13-3, 11-3, 12-7, 16-4. Now, they won 3 of those games, came back to win 3 of those games. They started all of those games. They're now mainly a zone team, and teams are getting comfortable early and burying shots. Now, also, every one of those teams but Cincinnati is an NCAA tournament team, including Kansas listed on there twice.
Yeah, they find a way, especially this that Cincinnati and Iowa State game were not banner days for the Baylor offense in any way, shape, or form. Even though they did get the win against Cincinnati, that first half was just brick after brick after brick after brick. It was awful to watch. I said on Friday, you guys weren't here, if you were a fan of made baskets, that game was not for you at all. And then, Iowa State's defense just kind of did a number on them on Friday night. And, they have a way of exploding on you, and they have a way of just not, getting the engines going. I think that'll be fine against Colgate. If they let New Mexico do that to them, though, they're going to have a problem. Although I do think that this was the best case scenario for them going through the first weekend when you get a team like Colgate and then you get New Mexico or Clemson. I'm sorry, I say New Mexico. Clemson's in there as well. I think I'm already kind of leaning towards picking the Lobos. But they can't do that and expect to make a deep run. You cannot fall behind, because when the air gets sucked out of the room in the NCAA tournament, it's really hard to put it back in there.
And it multiplies, Craig. The pressure on you. You start off missing your first 3 or 4. I got to give you a quick story on Friday night. What was it? Was it Thursday night? Thursday night they played Cincinnati. And I had flown into Florida, and I'm sitting there trying to prepare. They're playing that late game. And I started watching it initially on Gamecast. And I'm like, I just put my phone down. And then I happened to wake up a little bit after midnight, started watching the end of that game, and it was a brick after brick after brick. They ended up winning the game, but also then got blown out by Iowa State, who's playing at an incredibly good level right now.
Yeah, we need to I know we're going to probably do that in a second, but we need to stop down and show Iowa State some love for winning the tournament again and just the atmosphere. I know that everybody's been raving about that, and congratulations. I know that we'll pour some more love on them in a second, but that was a dadgum clank-off watching Baylor these last two games. I mean, I started to get a headache for the amount of times the ball just darted off the rim. It was ridiculous, and you give Iowa State in that last game a lot of credit. They're playing some great defense, but yeah, I mean, you have no chance if you can't make a single shot. I mean, if you're just dink, 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 and that's all it felt like they were doing the other night. It was just a total inability to make shots and get into any type of a rhythm. So yeah, I mean, if anybody performs like that, they're going to have a hard time advancing very far in this tournament. But for Baylor, yeah, the shots are going to have to fall, and if they don't, they could find themselves in some trouble. And you combine the slow starts, which, I don't know, an 8-point early lead. I mean, that's not insurmountable by any means, but that can get out of hand pretty quickly. And we saw, when one team's playing pretty hot throughout the Big 12 tournament, how quickly games can get out of hand. And so, Baylor got a taste of that. Houston got a taste of that. You hope that seasons them up a little bit further and resets them a little bit heading into the tournament. But yeah, Baylor just could not get shots to fall, and that's something that's going to be a major point of emphasis when looking at them and how far they can go. But their path, I think, based on the experts who seem to be experts in this field, of which I'm certainly not, but Kendall, Kaut, various others seem to really like the draw that they got. Even better than Iowa State's draw. Like, there's multiple Big 12 teams that people feel like have a better road than Iowa State does, despite Iowa State winning the conference tournament. So we'll see. But yeah, that was ugly to watch the other night.
Yes, it was. Now, here are the teams, and a good point, by the way, in the chat room. I just happened to see this. Who was it that brought this up? Why is there so much focus on those who don't make it rather than the 68 teams that do? But here are the ones that were right there on the edge. And then, of course, Friday and Saturday happened. And Sunday, all hell broke loose. Everybody that was probably not going to make a chunk of teams that were probably not going to make the tournament won their conference tournaments to get in, and it's kind of that early glimpse of March Madness. St. John's, Rick Pitino, we're going to hear from Niki Lattarulo. She covers St. John's for the New York Sports Network. She'll join us today. She used to work in the Waco market. Seton Hall, Providence, 3 Big East teams. Oklahoma, whose quad 1 record, they had 12 quad 1 losses. 12. They played a good schedule, but they just had so many losses. Indiana State, which you thought was going to be a mid-major that was going to get in and maybe do some damage. And then also there's the ACC with Pitt.
Indiana State just straight up got their bid stolen. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, they did nothing other than not win their conference tournament to deserve to not be in it, especially since they were like 28th or 29th in the net, whatever that was. And forgive me for not having the exact number. That's a lot to remember. But they had a really good net ranking, which, of course, Rick Pitino thinks is garbage. But all these other teams do have beef to some level or another. I don't think Pitt as much. I think Oklahoma maybe not as much, but a little bit. Of course, they did play that tough conference schedule. Oklahoma would be the team, though, that if Greg Sankey's plan for expansion of the tournament happens, would get in. Not St. John's and not Indiana State. Like, those are the teams that he wants to get in. His heart's not bleeding for poor Indiana State, who didn't win their conference tournament and then got bid stolen by NC State or Oregon or Long Beach State or someone like that. That's not who he's worried about. He's worried about the fact that Oklahoma, who's going to be one of his teams next year, wouldn't get in with a stronger strength of schedule because apparently he wants a more boring first-round game, I guess. But St. John's has a little bit of a beef. The Big East has a beef for sure, I think.
Yeah, I'll speak to Oklahoma. They didn't deserve it. They didn't deserve it. You had yourself on the bubble. You knew that going into the Big 12 tournament, and you didn't go and do anything. In fact, you kind of rested on your laurels a little bit, and you didn't go out and grab the bull by the horns. For lack of a better term, I know with Texas you think of horns. That's maybe not the best comparison with Oklahoma, but they didn't go out and earn that spot. You can't just expect it to be given to you. And so I think Porter Moser deserves a little bit of criticism for the way they handled it there at the end. And there's a lot of Oklahoma fans just unhappy with their style of basketball and just the whole mood really around that program in general. So that'll be something to continue to just watch moving forward. But, there was a lot of disappointed people when the Sooners didn't get their name called. But did I not ask every single one of the people that we interviewed last week about Oklahoma on the bubble, like, do you think Oklahoma's going to get in? And pretty much everyone thought so.
Yeah.
But, just the way the tournament played out, I don't think you can be shocked by that. So, yeah, that's unfortunate, and I hate it for those who got their bids straight up stolen. I don't think that was the case with Oklahoma. We just talked about Jeff Capel. Pitt doesn't even make the tournament, so his politicking, didn't work fully in the end. But I'm kind of with the texture there of why do we spend so much time on those that didn't make it? We're not, but we're, just pointing out who was there on that edge. Kind of summarizing, yeah. And there's certainly some fun conversations that can be had about that. That's that field that did not make it. But I think with Oklahoma, that's one that didn't need a whole lot of justification, in my opinion.
All right, speaking of Greg Sankey, and I wasn't here the last couple of days of last week, and I know all of how everything broke down as far as the college football revenue, and then also, I guess, the format eventually will be finalized. Let me tell you this. I did get a text from somebody in the Big 12 that said the ADs they're pissed. Now, I don't say all of them, but it was a dose of reality when everything came out. And then at the same time, it was like, angry and pissed because, and then Mac Rhodes, I think, is going to join us tomorrow. And about how the distribution came down. And yet again, they're still in play. They still have a pretty good chunk of money where some schools that used to get $5 or $6 million a year, when everybody's getting more, 3 times more or better, some schools are getting less than $500,000 who are now a part of the future in college football.
I think they're paying Oregon State and Washington State in restaurant coupons. Yeah. I mean, it's just
like vouchers.
It's insane.
Yeah,
well, it's a good thing they're getting the trust fund for the next 2 years, so they don't have to worry about that. But yeah, post 2 years, they definitely have to be a little bit concerned. So we'll see, I guess, later on this year what their future plans actually are. And for now, though, that's still to be determined. But I guess you weren't here. Yeah, the last couple of shows and. When this all came up, I said that if the Big 12 has a leg to stand on, or the ACC for that matter, but again, I always have to preface this, the ACC is not the same because they are too in flux to consider them as like this tight unit that's actually trying to work together. They're not. So how do you expect them to be a strength whatsoever in trying to pull things the other way when everybody's just waiting for them to die, basically? So that leaves the Big 12 and I mean, honestly, how many teams would jump if they got a call from the SEC and Big Ten? But we know that at least they're the strongest of the non-2 because they're the most cohesive at the moment. They're not the most valuable. I get that. The ACC is getting more money, but they are, in theory, on sturdier ground from top to bottom because they don't have this looming threat over their heads. So with that being said, I went on a long little diatribe about how if you feel like you've got a leg to stand on, if you've got a fight to fight, then fight. But it became very clear by how easily the SEC and the Big Ten got their way here that the Big 12, along with everybody else, decided that the money they're going to get, whether adequate in their eyes or not, is still better than anything they could get by doing something else. Splitting away or staging a campaign. They said, well, this is the best we're going to get. We better take it and eat our Brussels sprouts, even though we don't like them, because – yeah, we'd love to go start our own, hamburger chain, but we can't do it, and this is the best we got. So we got to eat our Brussels sprouts, and that's unfortunate, but that's the current landscape now, and that's all you could really do in from their standpoint. But that's a tough pill to swallow, absolutely.
And by the way, speaking of Brussels sprouts, that was a conversation while I was in Florida with some of my nieces, and they said that they hated them because my mom used to force us to eat them when they were all watered down. If you char them, you got to burn them basically to take the taste out of them. If you want to eat Brussels sprouts. Dan Walken, who I'm not always a fan of his writing or the topics that he picks, but that's okay. He's been doing this a long time. Let me make this point, since Greg Sankey apparently thinks this tournament is about championship opportunities that belong to his fiefdom. It's not. New Mexico has no pro teams. The hope of making the tournament keeps a state of 2 million people invested in college hoops. I like that. I agree with him. And there's other states like that too. Here's from Philip Meyer when it comes to this, the bigger conferences getting more and more and more. Now, I want you to reverse this. And remember now why the Big Ten and the SEC are getting more money in football, and deservedly so based on all of what they have. But here's something that's a little bit of an eye-opener. The last men's national champion from the SEC was Kentucky 12 years ago. The last true Big Ten champion, national champion, was Michigan State 24 years ago. The current Big Ten school, Maryland, who won it, but they were with the ACC in 2002. They joined the Big Ten in 2014. But do go on, Mr. Sankey.
Look.
So in basketball, when they split this up, should they do what they're doing in football? That's my question, based on what's happened over the last 15 or 20 years.
I'll put it this way. If Greg Sankey is pissed about bid stealers in basketball, shut the F up. You just stole a bid in football by politicking.
By the way, Florida State didn't get in this tournament.
Yeah,
they
they absolutely did not deserve to. I don't think they realized the ball's round this year in Tallahassee. But he just needs to shut up about it. Like, look, I know you're trying to get more for your league, and I know that's your job, but also don't try and ruin the thing that we all love. If you took a survey of everybody walking in the doors at the NCAA tournament this week and said, would you like to see the 12th best SEC team or the 13th best Big Ten team or the 14th best Big 12 team, or would you like to see more New Mexico's
or Indiana
and Colgate's and Indiana State's?
Yep.
Almost all of them would be like, give me Indiana State all day.
Yep.
So stop trying to mess with the thing that we like, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I started calling him Greed Sankey last week, and I'm going to say that probably more often than Greg at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's greed, it's I think power, and it's just somebody with a lot of both that's doing what he feels is best for his conference. Which, look, I understand that. I'm not expecting the SEC commissioner to look out for the greater good of college football. But I can't help but chuckle knowing that over the last few months, there's been more than one writer who's talked about how that's exactly what Greg Sankey stands for, is the greater good. And he's got hopefully all of college sports in mind.
The ecosystem of college athletics, yeah.
And he doesn't. And if he says he does, he's going to say that he does because what's best for college sports, per Greg Sankey, is for the haves to have the most and have what they feel they deserve, and then for everybody else to go play on their even playing field because they're not on even ground. Well, they're not on even ground more than ever because of the moves you've made, which, granted, are for the benefit of the organization you work for. So I don't fault him for that entirely. He's doing what's best for the Southeastern Conference, and maybe some people think that a great split's the best for college sports as a whole. I'm not there yet, not even close. Not at all when it comes to the basketball tournament. Like, you want to talk football and swing your sword as far as not like Mike Leach, but like you want to, go on the attack and you want to, be the guy trying to determine things and do all that in football. You've got a leg to stand on there. You don't have a leg to stand on in basketball. So I guess this is going to be one of those things where in football it matters who won, but now basketball-wise, we'll hear about TV ratings and, all these other categories that suddenly matter more than the actual on the court. So it's whatever's convenient at the time and whatever supports the argument, however you need it supported. And so, yeah, I don't see I don't like what I heard from Greg Sankey here recently. It's pretty clear, though, he doesn't care what anybody else thinks, and they're going to do what they do regardless. Yeah, he doesn't have to. So, whether you like it or not, it's like Ric Flair said, gosh, now I'm going to stumble here, but you may not like it, but you better learn to love it. And that's kind of how I feel Greg Sankey's playing ball right now, and maybe even the Big Ten, although they're not quite as outspoken. So, yeah, I hope the basketball tournament stays as is. I'm not a big fan of the expansion, and especially not if it's for the sake of, well, now Oklahoma gets in. They didn't deserve it. They didn't deserve to be in. So now we're going to accommodate them because
they were beat up down the stretch and limping in.
Right, yeah. and they were injured, and so there were things in play. It wasn't just Porter Moser did a bad job by any means. There were other factors in play. But you know what? That's the breaks. That's the breaks. Not everybody gets to just automatically get in. And so, yeah, I hope this doesn't go down the same road as the college football playoff. But at this point, I'm waiting for somebody to tell that guy no.
All right.
And that hasn't happened yet.
Sorry about that, Craig. Now,
I will. They just listen
a couple of great stories that almost ended up with a great story for Brown. who remember, 2-3 weeks ago, there was the thought that they were under a gambling investigation, or not a thought, there was a report. They did not beat Yale, who beat them in a last-second shot to win the Ivy League. And then there's Long Beach State. This is so cool. At the end of the regular season, Long Beach State informed Dan Monson that he was no longer going to be a part of their plans. He could finish out the regular season thinking that that would be it for them. They'd get to the tournament, conference tournament, and they would get beat and be gone. Okay, goodbye, we'll start our search. They won the Big West tournament, beat UC Davis. Not only is he still coaching at least one more game in the NCAA tournament, Dan Monson, who's been around for a while and I think hired Tommy Lloyd at one point, who's the Arizona head coach. He's set to make $35,000 in bonuses because of winning the conference, including an NCAA bid. Good for him. There's Steve Berkowitz. We had him on a couple of weeks ago, who has all that bonus information on coaches.
Yeah, I mean, go and get what you can get while you can still get it, and go make that money. But it seems like we're getting more and more of these announcements of guys getting fired. And even I've seen there's a female coach video. Now, in her case, and I can't remember the particulars, they were really bad. Like
it was Utah State.
Yeah, it was like Utah.
But it was right after the game ended.
I know, but they were like 6-28 or so. But it was right after the game. So my point is not whether it was valid or not. In her case, obviously it was. But the way you did it is something that's becoming kind of commonplace this basketball season. Of we've heard now like a handful of stories. It feels like of just can't even get off the court now. I remember in response to one of those, I saw a picture of Arizona State firing Herm Edwards basically on the field after his last game, right? Like not even off the grass yet, and you already had the AD and whoever else it was that were meeting him before you could even get to the tunnel. So, that does happen, but, go and throw him in a press conference situation afterwards. I don't know. There's got to be a better way to do that, and I don't think that those programs are so like in need of a fast turnaround that you can't just wait like a few hours or even a day and like drop the press release in the morning. But yeah, for some reason it feels like we're getting a lot of those. You're fired, and now let's hear about how you were fired. And in this case, go and do what you can to kind of throw mud back at them. So good for you if you can go on a little bit of a run here.
All right, Houston, of course, won the regular season title. And then Saturday night, they and we'll have Jeremy Branham, who's the voice of Houston basketball. Saturday night, the night before, Baylor ran into the Hilton South, I guess you could say, atmosphere and electricity. And then Saturday night, they jumped on Houston and, stuck their foot on their neck and broke them pretty quickly. Houston, of course, they kind of limped into the weekend too, but Iowa State crushed the Big 12 in the tournament in Kansas City.
Yeah, they did. They played exceptionally well. I was very impressed with what they did. They canceled out their last loss to Kansas State pretty much right away. So that was done. Then they rolled through everybody else that they played, including Baylor and Houston, and really just, I think they're in a good spot going in because they play defense. They're not, one of those teams that's in the top 50 in both, I know, but they could make some noise for sure. Again, also kind of stuck that they got in the UConn side of the bracket. So, but look, they're scary. I think it's as bad news for UConn as it is for Iowa State. Just, if you're the number one overall seed and you've got Iowa State and Auburn and some of the other teams on their side, Illinois, yeah, that's tough. But even still, I really like what they did the other day. I've seen a lot of people, and this happens every year, when Iowa State or Kansas, win or play in the final, and there's no home court. There's a home court advantage for them and nobody else. I say, okay, well then buy tickets and go. I know it's harder because you got to travel and you got to keep traveling week after week after week. But when the tournament was in Dallas, no one went there either. So
yeah, I think that's a little overblown to say nobody went. I know what you're saying though, Paul, but I know Ashley Hodge pulled receipts and there were more people than given credit for. You would think based on the way it's talked about that it was like ghost town, and that wasn't necessarily the case. But yeah, that's not the same atmosphere as Kansas City. So I saw a lot of that back and forth about the host site. I mean, I don't think if you don't ever give anybody else a chance to prove they can host it, then it's always going to be the best place because you haven't been to Dallas in how many years? And there's other spots you could potentially go. But yeah, it's not like it was is in Kansas City, and that is Hilton South, and it was every bit of that. I know that was something that a lot of the coaches were impressed by and also frustrated by. And I know the saying is, well, then go and beat them and prove it, or, do something different. But, I mean, you can't not pretend like that isn't a massive advantage, and not every school's built to be able to turn out like that. So credit for them being able to do it. It certainly played a role, and then you have a great basketball team on top of that, and that was a combination that nobody in the Big 12 had an answer for last week. So they went out and they earned that tournament championship, and gotta I guess not the draw that they desired the following day, but I think they'll be just fine in the tournament. Very curious about how deep of a run they make, because that is a team that you circle and you go, like, national title possibilities. They're in the discussion, I think. They're not top of mind necessarily, but they're definitely not too far down the list do you get before you go, well, what about Iowa State, and what could they possibly do when they're clicking on all cylinders? And they were clicking on all cylinders in KC, so that was super impressive turnout by the fans. Not surprising. We've seen them do that before. I think it just took much more center stage this year, it seems like, and just felt like there was much more conversation about it because it was just so lopsided. I mean, it was 100 fans from the opposing school to like 17,000 plus.
Yeah,
it was insane, and so that had to be a lot of fun for Cyclones fans, and then to win on top of that, what a week for TJ Otzelberger and company. Congratulations.
I understand it's closer, but it's also the Midwest, and like in certain other places, it's just a basketball love fest.
Yeah.
Now, if Iowa State was 10-20, would that many fans be there in Kansas City for the first round? They may have a bunch. They would still have a lot, though. It's a very passionate fan base. They travel well in all the sports.
And look, maybe I should go back, and to be fair to Dallas, the issue isn't necessarily attendance so much it is as the area sucks for that kind of event.
Well, but if it's at American Airlines Arena now, with all of what they've built up in downtown Dallas, that place is different than when it was around Reunion Arena and it was kind of there.
Yeah, well, no. AAC, though, when they was last there was barren around there. It's not barren any longer.
No, Paul, have you been there?
It's not barren any longer. It's not like it's not
but it's not Power and Light.
No, it's not the Power and Light district, but it's not intended to be either. And so it isn't what it was a few years ago. I'm not advocating for Dallas. I'm just saying that if you say, well, nobody else turns out, and the last time you even attempted it was like over a decade ago, well, things changed. Maybe it's different because Houston fans can get. But I'm not like making this an anti-KC and Iowa State thing, because I've seen so much of that. I'm just saying that I'm not opposed to moving it around, but I do understand if you don't like the home court advantage, then turn up like we turn up, and nobody turns up like them.
Who won the Big 12 men's basketball title last year in the tournament? Texas did.
Yeah.
Texas went in there and said, F you, we're going to win this tournament, no matter who else is a part of the tournament. Kansas, Baylor, whoever. They went in there and they won it. So it can be done, and maybe more often not, but just thought about that. Now, one thing about Iowa State, the one thing, if you look at the Ken Palm and all the data efficiency, their defense is ranked number one, and Scott Drew brought that up, in the country. Talk about what they've done under TJ Otzelberger. I mean, it's unbelievable. They are 55th offensively, which is not bad. That's not bad, but they are the number 5 ranked overall defensive efficiency. Houston, number 2. UConn is at number 1. Baylor has the 6th best offense, 281 defense. And that's been obvious. We brought that up earlier. Now, speaking of Iowa State, this is from Ryan Hammer. In the Ken Palm era, no top 2 seed that started the season unranked has ever made the Final Four. They averaged 2 wins per tournament, most recently Marquette and Purdue. Iowa State playing at an unreal level, but will they break that streak/curse? They're playing at a level where they could and should, but again, it's one of those trends over 20-something years that I saw yesterday on my timeline.
Yeah, I mean, they're a nasty bunch, and I mean that in the best type of way, and so they're ferocious, and they got all over Houston the other day. And, the Baylor result, I mean, the combination of just playing really good defense and then what shots that you did have, you clanked them all night. That was a recipe for disaster. But then for them to turn around and just lay it on Houston like they did was so incredibly impressive. And you have guys now who are emerging that, maybe just for health or just, the flow of the season, it just feels like they're starting to get like everybody playing really well all at the right time. And so we'll see how that carries them through. But, yeah, it was an amazing performance by the Cyclones, and you definitely have a reason to return to the Kelvin Sampson, TJ Osselberger Coach of the Year argument if you want to. And that was a fine argument to be had to begin with. I mean, you can see both sides of it, but you could revisit that again after what ISU did to U of H. And so, yeah, those are two programs that are going to be right there in the mix to hopefully go and appear and, if not, win a national championship if you're looking at it from the Big 12 standpoint. I know Brett Yormark's got to feel good about the opportunities that they'll have, even if it isn't quite the amount of teams that you wanted because of Oklahoma not getting in. But at the top between Houston and Iowa State and, Baylor, if they play well, a lot of people love their draw to at least get to the Sweet 16. That's easier said than done. They haven't done that since they won the national title, and that's 3 years ago now at this point. So, I'm excited to see how this all unfolds, but Iowa State's clicking at the right time for sure.
All right, I want you guys to think. Houston was probably as good as anybody throughout the year and still might be. Juwan Roberts' health, an extra day or two of him getting himself healthy. Iowa State didn't just smash Houston Saturday. Remember, they beat them early in the conference.
Yeah.
They also had an incredibly tight game down in Houston. So they've played 3 times, and Iowa State won 2 of those 3. So let's see if they can break that little dam of number 2 seeds who also were unranked to start the year. All right, when we come back, Houston, they kind of got a little fatigued, and I mean that because they started having players missing games. They still made the tournament championship. It was not easy. I still think the way that Kelvin Sampson and his team play, they're going to be just a handful. And you hope that Juwan Roberts is healthy. I spoke to Jeremy Branham. He's the voice of Cougars basketball, and he is next on 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be. And what can he do for you? As you get older, usually in your mid to upper 30s and even maybe later, but he can start then. Your testosterone levels inside of your body can start to change. They can start to get lower. It's part of Father Time, and either you're part of that 1 out of every 3 or 4 men or you're not. So if, in fact, your sleeping habits aren't the same, if your sex drive is not the same, if your energy and focus is not the same, it could be your testosterone dropping. Even if you have a good exercise schedule and diet, it happens. Dr. Petty can help you out. Contact him, pettycliniclowt.com. He will then set you up with an appointment. They will take care of that appointment. You give your blood. He gets the results, looks at your testosterone levels, and if they are too low, he can put you in a program, give you the option to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, used to be, and need to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Nicki Group Insurance Agency. With the Nicki Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Nicki Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Nicki Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
The broadcast voice of University of Houston Cougars, number one ranked team, of course, or number one seed. I know the poll came out. It's different this week with UConn. But, Jeremy, thanks for your time. David Smoak, 365 Sports. Houston has not only been a fantastic team, but they've been resilient. They've had injuries, some out for the year. Juwan Roberts dinged up. Who are they right now, and are they still in pretty good shape as they enter the tournament?
Yeah, they're battered and bruised. They would like to have a little bit more depth than they have. I think you saw that come to light a little bit with the third game in 3 days. Juwan Roberts, Coach got a little bit. He was precautious with that one. Held him out in the second half after he gave it a go in the championship game. I still think they're a good team. I think they're a good team, but they do have some depth issues. They don't have the depth that they had when the season started. So, you're talking about fatigue, foul trouble is something that sticks out. And all those players, too, they're all bigs. Terrence Arsenault is the backup 4. Ramon Walker was a backup 4. JoJo Tugler, who's out for the year, was a backup 4. So their bigs are pretty limited. Foul trouble is something that can get them. But, the fact that you're not going to have to play 3 games in 3 consecutive days, I still think they're all right.
What about the matchups in the bracket where they are? Being a number one seed, of course, they're going to be expected to continue on. Your overall thoughts about the initial couple of days and then also just the region itself?
Yeah, I think every team is good, right? When you get to the NCAA tournament, you have the Big South champions in Longwood who had some troubles in the middle of the year, but it seems like they figured it out. A lot of Houston connections there too. Their coach was a businessman in Houston, an attorney, started his own business, coached AAU in Houston for a while in the Third Ward actually. And then you look ahead, coaches and players won't do that, but it's 8 seed Nebraska, who's a really good team, finished the season hot. I think they're well coached, Brett Hoiberg, and then Texas A&M, who's very familiar. And those two teams actually played earlier this year. Houston and A&M played at the Toyota Center, which was a 4-point game. Houston had the big lead. Wade Taylor was incredible in the second half of that game, and it was tied with about a minute and a half to play. So any matchup you play in a tournament's tough. The other half of the bracket, I've seen the names. I haven't dove in on them as much, but you got some blue bloods there, right? You got Duke, who's always really talented. Kentucky, really good. I was actually looking at a mock draft earlier this morning, and Kentucky has 2 players that are going to be top 10 picks. So incredibly talented there. And then you have Marquette at the very bottom, the 2 seed, who, if they get healthy, they're as good as anybody. So it's a good region. I think all the regions are good, though. We kind of dissect who has the toughest road, who has the easiest road.
Yep.
I think every road's hard. Like you go look at the top 4 seeds in any region. They're very, very difficult.
Jeremy, they play like their coach, who's a Bulldog. And I love Kelvin Sampson, the way he coaches, his personality, his toughness. And has that also helped them during this time where they've had bumps and bruises? And in some cases, more than bumps and bruises, they take on his personality?
Yeah, I think it does help. He's always one to, look, this is the reality of the situation. Nothing we can do is going to change it. So we just got to go out, have a plan, and do the best that we can. And I think the players kind of take on that same mindset too. Hey, we got some injuries here or there. So what? Like we want to go win a game. Just because we have a couple of our teammates that are down doesn't change our desire that we want to go out and win a game. So there's no woe is me in this program. There's no getting down on yourself in this program. There's no complaining in this program. You're going to be tough-minded. You're going to be physical. You're going to play to the things that he demands, the Holy Trinity, he calls it. So, yeah, they do. They do take on his personality where they're tough. No woe is me, and they're going to be ready to go. They'll be well prepared. You're going to get a fight when the Cougars come into town.
So Scott Drew last night, when he had his media session on Baylor and their number 3 seed, was discussing again how the conference prepares you then for the tournament. Do you get the impression, and again, it also can wear the hell out of you too, but do you get the impression that maybe the Big 12 teams are in not relieved, but looking forward to playing somebody else?
That's an interesting way to put that, because I agree with both of the notions that you said. Like, I agree with the Scott Drew notion where this league prepares you for NCAA tournament play. Like, every game feels like an NCAA tournament. Big 12 title game against Iowa State in front of 15,000 of their fans feels kind of like a regional final in somebody's backyard. You play in a tournament game at least a tournament caliber team most nights. I think Houston in their 34 games played 16 of them against NCAA tournament teams, maybe give or take 1 or 2 there. So how does that not prepare you? They get you ready for the caliber of opponent that you're going to face. I 100% agree with that. I also agree with the notion that it can kind of batter and bruise you a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you can get through 100% healthy, that's a tremendous benefit. But if you can't get in, 100% healthy into the tournament, how much does that hurt you? So I think there's some trade-offs there, some goods and bad. I think it's more good than bad. I think if you get through healthy, the Big 12 portion of the schedule, then it's really, really good. So I would say that there's positives and negatives, mostly good. And if you're healthy, I think it's a total benefit to you entering the NCAA tournament.
Houston has had 2 really long win streaks and one that was pretty decent in the middle among their losses. But I'm not one I've never been one that if a team was unbeaten, if they lose a game, it might be good for them. In this case, Houston was not 100%, but that's not taking anything away from Iowa State and what they've done, because they've been really good too. Do you feel like that didn't really matter Saturday? Because it was one-sided from the beginning pretty much. Did anything good come from that?
I think it does put that chip on your shoulder a little bit. I kind of agree with you, although Kelvin Sampson's really good following defeat. If you look at his tenure at the University of Houston, they don't lose back-to-back games very often. They did early in the Big 12 this year where they started 1-2, and then they lost one game the rest of the way. So I think it puts that chip there a little bit. Maybe it makes you feel like they're not unbeatable, which I think is healthy. I think it's healthy going into the NCAA tournament to have that. And yeah, it was a perfect storm in the Big 12 title. I won't say it didn't matter. You still saw a celebration there.
Right.
You saw a happy team on the other side. So I think it did carry some weight. I think it did matter. But it was a perfect storm. There were a lot of variables came into play, and the biggest variable was Iowa State. Iowa State was fantastic in that game. Really, really good. They shot the ball really well. They defended really well. They were really good. They had a great crowd there, 15,000, plus probably to see Iowa State. And then you mentioned with all the injuries, the Cougars really aren't a team that, no team's good playing 3 games in 3 days. Houston especially, just because the lack of bench they have some rotation guys right now. So 3 games in 3 days is tough for anybody, and I think even more so for Houston right now.
How much does just the gap of time between Saturday and now till they play coming up later in the week, how much of that gap of time is healthy?
Massive. That's huge. Sure, they're going to get ready for their opponent, no doubt. But I think where it helps the most, two areas where I think it helps the most. One is Juwan Roberts. He had that shin contusion in the Big 12 semifinal. He tried to play on it twice in the semifinal. Sampson ultimately, it's not worth it. Let's go ahead and shut you down. He played at the beginning of the Big 12 final, and then Coach Sampson again, it's not worth it. Let's shut you down. So he's at least capable of playing on it, but I think the amount of days in between is huge. Playing Saturday and then to Friday is going to help Juwan tremendously. And then secondarily, it's about the other players. Jamal has been playing heavy minutes all this season. LJ has been playing heavy minutes. Since JoJo Tugglers went down, Javier Francis is playing heavy minutes whenever he's not in foul trouble. So just the rest getting him closer to 100%, trying to build that gas tank back up again. I think it's tremendous. And it's good, too. You look at last year, you were in the American.
Sure.
They played a Sunday They played a Sunday conference championship game. So just that extra day, I think, is big, too. And then playing Friday instead of Thursday, I think, is big. So you just get as much separation as you can. Try to get everybody as healthy as you can, and then try to go to war.
Jeremy Branham, voice of Houston basketball, with us on 365 Sports. I got a question about Jamal Shead. You've seen him do pretty much everything, game-winning shots, even almost looked like he had beaten Baylor on a near half-court shot. It was overruled. They still won the game in overtime in that great game in Waco. How do you describe him? Do you run out of sometimes words for him?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I would just say, All-American, I think kind of summarizes the play of Jamal Shead. He is the leader of this team. Some of his teammates call him a coach on the floor. And that's what you want from your point guard ultimately, right? And they say that is your coach on the court, and he is that. He has a very good understanding of what the coaching staff wants from not only him, but from the entire team. You look at him in between plays, even like baseline out of bounds play, sideline out of bounds. He's coaching up the team, letting them know where to go. He's a fantastic leader, first and foremost, and then he's a fantastic player, too. He's really elevated his game. He said one of his goals this year was to be the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, not the Big 12 Player of the Year, which he wanted in the American last year, too. So back-to-back conference Defensive Player of the Year, American last year, Big 12 this year. He can do it all. He can beat his guy off the dribble. He can get to the rim. He's improved a lot as a three-point shooter. Stepped up his game there. And then defensively, he's the guy at the top of one of the best defenses in the entire country, and it all starts with on-ball defense, and he provides that. So, yeah, he does a little bit of everything. He's been a lot of fun to watch this year.
Big 12 basketball is a sledgehammer. No doubt. Houston has handled it incredibly well. But the tournament, sometimes it depends not only on the matchups, but also how it's officiated. That's the way it is all the time. Is that in any way a concern with the Big 12, Houston, or other teams with how sometimes different officiating crews can handle it?
Yeah, if you can't adapt, if you can't adapt to the whistle, I think it can be. I think the teams that are, good at that sort of thing can adapt, though. They get a pretty quick feel of how the game's being officiated. And you make the adjustment. Okay, this one's going to be called a little tight. Okay, all right. Well, let's make our adjustments. Let's not close out as much. Let's not, whenever we double team, let's not get in the cylinder as much. So I think it has to be something that you fill out early and you make that adjustment. I think Houston's good at making that adjustment. I would just adding to that, piggybacking off it a little bit, I would say that this year's team is the most prone to that foul trouble, though. If you get into foul trouble and all of a sudden it's Javier Francis or it's Jawan Roberts, now you either have to go small because you don't really have that backup yet. Ted Lott has been playing quite a bit, who's still very raw as a redshirt freshman. Coach Sampson said he's probably not there yet, but he's been pressed into action. So, most years whenever you have the depth, okay, you get into foul trouble, you make the move, you try not to foul too much so they don't get to the free throw line a whole lot. But when you look at this year's Houston Cougar team, it's, well, if you foul, you're either going to have to go small or you're going to have to play somebody that's really raw. So that's an area where the Cougars will have to make that adjustment if it is a tight whistle, because foul trouble can hurt this team more than previous years because of the injuries.
It's Friday. It's a late tip. Longwood and Houston. Cougars who won the Big 12 regular season title. Jeremy Branham, the voice of Houston Cougars athletics, with us on 365 Sports. All right, in the next segment, we'll get into some other little nuggets on the tournament and even some college football news and notes. If you look forward to that, that'll be in the next segment. A little bit later on, Kendall Kaut will join us along with Niki Lattarulo, who covers St. John's. And what's been the reaction? I've seen how Rick Pitino has handled that very well. She'll come to us live from New York at 5 o'clock. So I've been having, really for about a year, a lower back type soreness. And then my right hip has also had a stinging type feeling at times, and it's just, I'm tired of it. So I'm going up to Dallas to go see a back specialist, and it's one that would rather fix you in every way possible rather than any kind of a knife. So I'm going to do that as I try to figure it out because I'm tired of it. So I called Ideal MRI after talking to this clinic, it's called the Carroll Clinic. Got some incredible doctors, Cowboys, Rangers, etc. type team doctors. And they wanted to know if I had a recent MRI. And I've had 2 MRIs of my lumbar at idealmri.com. You've heard me talk about them. 21 and 22. They said, okay, can you bring the disc with the images and the report? So, by the way, today I called them. When I got back from Florida, I said, can I come by, get the disc and image, and then also the report? Went by there before the show. It was there in an envelope. I have it. I'll take it to the clinic next week. It's that they just are really good at what they do at Ideal MRI. That's just customer service to try to help me figure out how can I get better, stronger when it comes to my back. Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time with an MRI. The average is $1,100 or more. And on top of that, it's pretty simple to get an appointment. Not because they don't have customers. They have a ton of patients. But you can get in and get out, and the state-of-the-art technology MRI machine is right there. I've been in it 3 different times. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace in the southern part of I-35 in Waco, idealmri.com.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Just around the corner, Kendall Kaut. Also some pretty cool news again on Grant Taft's name being attached to a stadium in the state of Texas. We'll have a quick comment from him on that. So there's been a lot of talk. A&M and Nebraska are going to play not only in men's basketball, they're going to play in men's and women's basketball in the first round of the tournament. Now, there's some evil people in that committee. We already know that based on some decisions they made. You know there was snickering. One of the names on the committee, Barry Collier, is a former Nebraska basketball coach, burned the Alabama AD at Alabama, we know, right? His dad was an AD at both Nebraska and A&M.
Yes, and at A&M, they decided to move the SEC while he was on vacation in Europe.
Yes, and did not really know what was going on. So they're going to play each other in the first round, and there's been a lot of talk about it's the Trev Alberts competition, and it needs to be about the players. Here's Matt Rule earlier today had an opening of their spring drills practices involving the names of Juwan Gary, Sam Hoiberg, Josiah Alec, Kasil Tamiyanga.
Invoking the names.
Invoking. What did I say?
Involving
well,
the names.
It's the same thing. Jazz Shelley and others.
Not really, no.
They embody what he loves about Nebraska. I'm here. I'm all in. Now, some people can probably go, okay, yeah. Julie is all in. She's apparently going to open up like a business, a store, and we're not going anywhere unless you guys kick us out.
Okay, I just want to say that's a great response. If you're a Nebraska fan, where else is he going to go right now? I mean, he's just been there for a year.
He brought this up because he was asked about it.
Well, I understand. I think Nebraska fans are just in the midst of a lot of feelings right now, and so they're freaking out a little bit. But, like, where's Matt Rule going to go? He has something to prove. I don't know if you guys realize that, but he has something to prove.
Oh, I do.
Coming off of last year's growth. And now you expect another step forward, but, you know, I understand how hot his name was at one point in time, but it's not that level of what it was. And so he's got some proving to do. I don't think it's a situation like it was at Baylor where you're just like, oh, he can just go leave for another job whenever he wants, right? That's not where he finds himself. So I just wanted to say that kind of first for those freaking out about him. Oh, my God, my AD's gone. I'm going to leave.
The president who hired him,
I understand.
Admiral Carter, and also the AD and Trev Alberts who hired him are both gone, and that's usually part of at least wondering about, what about everybody else?
Sure. Is the A&M job filled?
Yes, it is.
So what's Trev Alberts going to do about Matt Rule? Yeah. Absolutely nothing. He's got a brand-new head coach in Mike Elko. That's my point, and there's no other jobs open that are going to go grab him. So I think Nebraska fans need to relax on worrying too much about Matt Rule. That's my point. And, you know, that's great, though, that he's giving them what they clearly need right now in this time of sadness and a little bit of heartbreak, losing an alum to another school that's not where he went to school. That's something that you need sometimes, is that reassurance. And so clearly there were some people concerned about Matt Rule, and he's calmed those waters. Now, I'd imagine there's a Baylor fan somewhere or a Temple fan somewhere who can pull up quotes like that and say, my family loves it here.
Right.
We're focused in. But I think with Nebraska, it's legitimate because there's not many more big brands than that. And quite frankly, this is about as good as he can do for right now. Mm-hmm. And I say as good as, that's a really good job. Like, what else was he going to go take the what job? There's nothing open. So, I think that's probably a smart move. But again, I think it's probably more Nebraska fans just a little bit worried too much just because of the Trev Alberts move. But I understand why that's an ominous feeling kind of a move of like, whoa, if we lost Trev Alberts, then what does that mean overall about the state of things? And clearly, as you mentioned, there's the whole issue with the president and the hire, and that's part of what played into Trev Alberts' decision as he got introduced at Texas A&M today, which was weird to just see him in the Aggie halls and you know, doing the whole gig 'em thing. But yeah, I get it. It's a very nervous time for a lot of people in college athletics, and Nebraska finally feels like they're starting to get back to where they were, and then the most trustworthy of people that's going to guide them is suddenly out the door. So that would leave you a little dizzy.
Alum?
Yeah.
A former star?
Player? Yeah, I get it.
But there was a lot of stuff I didn't even myself realize, because I don't keep up with it that deeply, about the administration at Nebraska, things that they want, what they're pushing, and also what Trev Alberts wanted and others wanted too. So they got a little mess on their hands when it comes to that.
And they need to get an AD that's going to be as aggressive as Trev Alberts was being and keep on that path. You know, the thing is, right, as you read any Nebraska columnist, you know, usually when the AD leaves, you've got like a retirement announcement, or, you know, you kind of know what's coming. Like when Ross Bjork left for Ohio State, most of the A&M writers kind of knew it was coming because they knew he was a candidate for that job, so they were preparing for it. When you wake up in the morning and Trev Alberts is all of a sudden going to Notre Dame or to A&M, you sit there and you think, oh my gosh, like who can possibly do this? So every column I've read about possible replacements is mad spitballing. Yeah. And the only one who makes a ton of sense to me for them to keep, if you want to keep in the Trev Albert's mode would be Ed Stewart, who's at USC right now. He's been in the Big 12. He's been a lot of places. He's a former player there, just like Trev Alberts was. But outside of that, like really, and maybe he doesn't, maybe he likes living in Southern California. Maybe, maybe he doesn't miss the Midwest.
I would. I sure as hell would.
Yeah, it's a tough thing for them. And especially when you're trying to get the football program back on the footing that it even close to what it was. I don't even think that right now the goal has to be, let's try to get Nebraska back to the Osborne years. It just let's get Nebraska football back to matching the enthusiasm. Like the results need to match the enthusiasm, right? Because they have that for almost all their sports, and everything else is going pretty well right now. They sold out the football stadium for a volleyball game, for crying out loud. They've got everything you need to do it. They just haven't, and they need an athletic director who can share that vision, especially with the football coach who you just hired moving forward.
Yeah, the football team is it. It's the heartbeat, and although other sports are having a nice run, that both basketball teams made the tournament. It's been a while for them when it comes to men's basketball. So there is that. Also, Dartmouth today saw this report. Remember, they voted to unionize, correct? Mm-hmm. Dartmouth today has said that they will not negotiate with the basketball team as a union.
Well, there's still a lot to go before they even really would be made to. So I'm not surprised to hear that. And again, nobody negotiates with a union anywhere until the law makes them. That's pretty much how it works. Most of the big, powers that be don't do that until they're made to, because if they don't have to,
why?
They're not going to.
Yeah.
It would...
NCAA's philosophy. If I don't have to do it, why am I going to worry about it?
Yeah. I mean, and again, sometimes that backwards thinking can leave you, and many times that not thinking forwards can lead you into a bad spot. But until everything's official and all the things that they have to go through, there's nothing that Dartmouth is going to have to do until a court says, now you have to do it.
It says that the school outlines their legal strategy going forward to stop the player-employee movement. So that was also a part of their conversation or statement.
Well, so Amanda Kristovich had that Dartmouth's refusing to collectively bargain with the new men's basketball player union, as you said. Next step in the two-pronged strategy, using every possible legal avenue to fight the players' union employee movement. So this is part of their strategy to go against this. As Mitt Winter, who's see him chiming in on law matters on occasion, says if the full NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board, I'm sad that I even know that, doesn't overturn the regional director's decision, it will engage in a technical refusal to bargain, which would result in an unfair labor practice charge being filed and then ultimately go into federal court. So, yeah, this is going the legal route, and we'll see what happens with, I guess, that decision and whether or not it's overturned, because that'll be part of the next step. But, yeah, this is apparently Dartmouth's strategy, and we'll see if it works for them. But, I don't know what the timeline and kind of how quickly this all may unfold, but it's notable, obviously.
All right, let's go to a couple of the chat room comments from earlier today. I see where J.G. Nielardo and Metal are going at it. Metal saying that he's backing Memphis, and saying that Memphis would take out Houston. I don't know why you'd want to get into that argument. I really don't know. Memphis is in the tournament, but you're a Memphis fan. That's fine. I also saw this from somebody that, and this is from J.G. Nielardo about Houston. Houston was good for months. Iowa State was good for 1 week. Now, J.G., I'll take your side on the Memphis deal. And although in a one-game game, you don't know, a one-time game. Iowa State's finished the season inside the top 5. Iowa State won 2 out of 3 against Houston. Now, who's better? I mean, you could still say Houston might be the team you take. I don't know, but it's not a little 1 week run by Iowa State.
They lost 3 more games than Houston all year long.
And beat Houston 2 out of the 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just wanted to, I just saw that. I like to go into the chat room every once in a while and scare the hell out of people that I'm actually paying attention to.
Yeah, no,
I always do.
I think Iowa State's way more than just some flash in the pan in Kansas City. They were playing really good basketball before that. I think just obviously the spotlight's much brighter right now based on what they just did. But yeah, no, there's no need to knock them. Now, if you don't think they're as good as advertised, you don't think they're going to go make a deep run, hey, that's totally your opinion. But I don't know. Just me personally, I don't really feel the need to bring them down. I think Houston, Iowa State, and plenty of other teams in the conference and beyond the Big 12 are going to have a lot of opportunity to make some noise. And let's see, like, who's talking at the end of it. You know, if they go get knocked out in the round of 32, then by all means, what'd you say, JG? JG. Then by all means, come in here and tell us, like about Iowa State not making it. But yeah, I think right now they're getting love for a reason, and it wasn't just some flash in the pan. That's my opinion.
And Memphis is not in the tournament.
No, aren't they?
No, they're not in the tournament. Memphis isn't in.
Oh, I'm almost positive they're one of the last teams in.
I'm looking at the bracket right now, and maybe I'm missing it. Hold on, I'm not gonna definitively say it, but
what about one of the play-in games? Well, if you didn't make the tournament, you're arguing your team would beat Houston, you have no reason to do that. You can't do that. Although a one-game deal, a one-time deal, you just never know. Dan Miter.
Boise State is in the tournament. And that's who I think Metal likes.
Oh, okay.
But they are in a play-in game for sure, yeah. But Memphis is not.
How about the teams opting out of the NIT? The transfer portal has also opened up today in college basketball. So you wonder about sometimes the leadership and people who make decisions, or if they can. The transfer portal opened today in college basketball, and I saw Jeff Goodman of the Field of 68 that at about 9 o'clock this morning, there were 60 names in the portal already. And there's 351 teams, so there'll end up being a couple thousand. Why would you do that when the tournament starts? Why would you do that when the tournament starts? I don't understand that. Why couldn't they have waited until the first week in April? And again, I don't understand because I don't get it. As far as teams opting out of the NIT, yes, they have. A lot of them have. I saw St. John's, who was right on the edge of getting into the big boy tournament. They opted out. I saw Tom Cream, who used to coach, what was it, at Indiana, just blasting teams that opted out of the NIT.
He's a Harbaugh. Tom Crean's a Harbaugh by marriage.
Angry?
No,
that's
marriage.
right. Yeah,
he's a Harbaugh by marriage. No,
he said, go find five guys, go play games, and develop whoever's there that's going to be there for next year.
I understand both sides of opting out and thinking it's not going to, especially now that your roster could be shredded anyway when it comes to developing. But I do think that there are benefits to go playing in the NIT and improving for next year with a team that did not make the tournament. But I'm kind of do whatever you want and see what happens, because look, it's highly likely St. John's could go to the NIT, and most of the team that you went through the NIT with is going to leave anyway, or you're going to bring in other guys, you're going to shove some guys out the door. So maybe the developmental benefits of the NIT are not the same as they were in the pre-free-for-all era.
Jeff Capel, who was caping for his program in the ACC the other day, they opted out of the NIT. Porter Moser in Oklahoma, who we were just talking about, they opted out of the NIT. There's various others. Some of it's injuries. Memphis, who you were talking about, they opted out of the NIT. They didn't make the tournament. As Paul mentioned, they opted out of the NIT as well. So those are just few of the schools that have elected to do that. But, yeah, I don't have a big HSO, hot sports opinion on teams. I mean, there's teams that have a valid reason if you're not healthy and you're not in it and you're just like, let's all go our separate ways. Like, we don't need to run this back. There's teams maybe that are younger and healthier that decide, like, this could be like Scott Drew and Baylor years ago, where they went and won the NIT and it was this big spark and it was a big deal. And in the absence of not making the NCAA tournament, they made the best of a bad situation, and it actually gave them momentum going into the offseason. So I guess it's just eye of the beholder, and I also think that when Scott Drew and them did that was also several years ago in a completely different landscape than it is right now. There wasn't NIL. There wasn't any of this other stuff going on. So I can imagine that it's, a tough decision to make. Ole Miss was another one. Indiana opted out. So, I mean, I think we need to almost worry about less about like who's opting out and worry more about the NIT as a tournament, because
that's exactly right.
All these teams don't want to play in it. That gives you another level down, and sorry, but the fans aren't going to pack that like Memphis and Indiana and Oklahoma, like when they're into it. So I wonder what kind of an ill effect this has on the NIT and just its perception moving forward.
How many of those schools did Greg Sankey call that are a part of the SEC or about to be and say, don't show any interest in the NIT. We're trying to enlarge our tournament, and so show that you're not going to play it if you're not a part of the big boy tournament. That's what's his name, Greed? Is that what you called him?
I'd call him Greed Sankey the other day.
From Metal, by the way, I'm glad the committee did not snub Boise State. You know I'll be rooting for the Broncos. Dan,
I mean, I think that to say to the Greed Sankey thing, I would say off the top of my head initially, no, that's silly. And then here's the same guys like quoting Confucius all the time, the art of war on Twitter constantly, and then making these moves that are clearly happening behind the scenes. So you know what? He probably is. You know what? I'm going to stop not giving him the benefit of the doubt. At this point, with all the way that these things have unfolded now, Greg Sankey probably is doing that for all we know. Can't prove it, obviously, but no, it wouldn't shock me if that was part of the grand plan because – you know, I say no, there's no chance of that happening, and then we look up, and all of a sudden the tournament's expanded and he got his way.
Ole Miss, among others. JG, by the way, the Houston fan. I'll be delighted if Houston makes the championship game. Satisfied with the Final Four. Neutral with an Elite Eight appearance. Anything less than I'm sour grapes. There's a lot of teams and fan bases that probably feel the same.
Yeah, I mean, Houston with the year they've had, you got to hope for Elite Eight at bare minimum. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Sweet 16 would be great, but with the way that you've hung around at the top all year long, that would be a pretty big disappointment. Even though Sweet 16, that's a banner and everything. Yeah, you definitely want to be at least at the level of 8. So yeah, that's where I'm sure a lot of brackets will have them. We'll see though. That was a tough one to take the other night. I know that.
This one we'll come back with Kendall Kaut to look at a lot of the Big 12 teams. Also, among the Big 12 teams, who does he think can reach the Sweet 16? We can go in deeper in the tournament at some point. We'll do that too. That and more. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Your hometown grocery store feeling with a full-service butcher shop, pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And then also the bakery that has fresh baked bread, kolaches, pies, cakes, and more every single day. They have a lobster tank, too. I said seafood, but they have a lobster tank if you want to go in there and pick out the size of lobster tail you want. And then all the little knickknacks you need up and down the front and middle of what they have. Cold beer, cold wine. They have a little coffee shop drive-thru on the side, too, if you want some of that. Order what you want when it comes to the butcher shop, and they will pick it up when it's ready and at your convenience, too. Monday through Saturday, the Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com with me, David Smoak. And tell you what, you guys keep rolling along. You do have yet another date, correct, for an online and live auction?
Yes, our next online and live auction will be Thursday, April 25th.
We've discussed how this has been unique and how people have reacted to it. Has that momentum continued as you've done more?
Yes, it's kind of half and half. We'll have a good amount of people there that are from the area, and then we have probably 40% that we ship out. And everybody that I've delivered locally to has talked about how much fun they had, and they want to know when the next one's going to be. We've gotten great feedback from the people that we've shipped to. They're all just so excited about this event, and they can't wait for the next one to happen.
Premium grade East Texas beef. Customers don't have to go out and buy their beef. TexasBeefHouse.com, from their family and their ranch to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers, here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
We're going to hear from Kendall Kaut here momentarily. 365 Sports every weekday, at 3 to 6 Central. Also the triple option 1 until 2, and other particular shows that go on, including the Bearcast every Tuesday. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Emery Winter is already dialing up what we'll have tonight on 365 Sports tonight on the local CW at 10:30, and then also Jack McKenzie. He is always trying to figure out a way to make everything we do bigger, better, faster, and stronger. Garrett Ross, again, running the mothership. Garrett, what hat do you have on today? H-Town?
This is a DJ Screw hat.
Oh, I just noticed that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Got this at the Screw Shop.
Already.
Kendall Kaut, college basketball analyst for 365 Sports and Sikkim 365 Radio, joins us on the show. And Kendall, thank you for your time. Of the Big 12's teams that got in, 9 of them, how many of those are legitimately, at this particular time, do you feel like playing at a point where they can make the Sweet 16?
I think a few could, and I think maybe the surprising team for me is I think KU has a shot. I think that's probably the team that's most hated on in the Big 12 after the end of the season, some of the injuries they dealt with. But I look at their bracket, I think there's a real shot KU could not only make a Sweet 16, maybe even Elite 8 Smoky. So I think a lot of the teams have a chance. I think BYU could do it. I think Iowa State certainly. Baylor could do that pretty easily too. So I think those teams kind of stand out for me on top of obviously Houston as all teams to make the Sweet 16.
Yeah, Kendall, I think particularly Baylor and Kansas got about as good a draws as they could have in the first weekend when you consider everything is. And I know that Kansas has to play teams that bomb threes, and that's not what they do. And if Baylor gets to New Mexico, I think, which a lot of people expect, that's going to be a tough one. But I like looking around at where either of those two teams could have wound up. I think this is probably the best case scenario.
I think absolutely, Paul. To me, Colgate is the worst 14 seed, not only just in terms of you look analytically, but I've watched some of their games this morning, and that does not scream a team that should beat Baylor, even some of the upsets. And I guess trigger warning for people. Georgia State had a lot of athleticism. They have Kevin Ware transfer in and a first-round draft pick beyond him on their roster. When you're playing them as a 14 seed, that's a lot different team than Colgate, where their guys are definitely, as Enterprise would say, going pro in something other than sports. So for me, easily a game that Baylor should win against Colgate. New Mexico's a very good 11 seed, actually favored, I think, by 2.5 points. The last time I checked the gambling lines over Clemson. But if you're complaining about having to play an 11 seed in the second round, you got to beat good teams to win the NCAA tournament. I think that's a great draw for Baylor heading to Memphis this weekend.
Kendall, your thoughts on Iowa State's demolition of the whole conference, really, this past week. But obviously the big win over Baylor and then crushing Houston in the championship game. Your thoughts on just the way the Cyclones are playing now as we turn the page into this final stretch?
Really good basketball from them in Kansas City, Craig. I was at the Iowa State-Baylor game, and you could kind of tell quickly Baylor got off to its proverbial slow start, as the Bears have too often this season. Then Iowa State flips a switch. I wasn't quite as interested in the championship game, given I got home very late from the Baylor-Iowa State game, Craig. But just the dominance. I hadn't seen anyone put the cramps down on Houston like that. Houston, even with the injuries they sustained recently, still a dominant team. Iowa State winning by 28. I mean, what a con job by the committee to not put Iowa State as a 1 seed. I thought a much better resume than North Carolina, analytically much better than North Carolina. But I guess a committee that would put Virginia in the field, give Michigan State a 9 seed, would have no problem telling Iowa State to pound sand. So very strange to me that Iowa State's not on the 1 line, and certainly the number 8 overall team. I don't get it. I don't know what TJ Otzelberger's feeling very good. There are jokes online because the Iowa State AD, Jamie Pollard, was on the committee. Maybe he made some people mad in that room, but horrible situation. You really got to feel for UConn. It's the best team in the country. That Iowa State's your 2 and that Auburn's your 4. Just an absolute hit job for UConn. As good as Baylor has it, UConn has just absolutely, I think, awful draw. One of the worst I've ever seen for the overall 1 team.
All right, so Kendall, you are who you are, or what your record says you are. How convince me Baylor's defense can somehow get better? And by the way, that's in 4 days.
Yep. So, Smokey, I will play devil's advocate out of respect to the show and answer the question. I think the answer would be maybe Baylor figured out something with the zone, much better zone play during the tournament from Baylor in the Big 12 tournament than they'd had earlier in the season. Maybe there's also something to those Caleb Lohner lineups where he plays along with Jalen Bridges. Maybe he was Baylor's best player in Kansas City after being probably their worst rotation player during the season. You get that combo of Jalen Bridges, Caleb Lohner. That gives you a lot more length. Once Langston Love comes back, which I expect will probably happen in Kansas City, you've got some more depth. All of those pieces come together, the defense to get a little bit more hope for. But I made the best case I can for it. I don't believe that case. I think the defense is what it is, as you mentioned, Smokey.
Kendall, is that why the matchups that they have, which would be Colgate, then New Mexico and Clemson, are kind of favorable because, those teams are not built on defense either?
No, and I think they're very favorable, Paul, because I don't think Clemson or Colgate's very athletic. New Mexico, a lot more athletic. A good team would not be shocked at all if New Mexico beats Baylor. I think Baylor will probably be a 1.5, 2-point favorite in that game, so that's not much better than a coin flip. But for what you could get with two of your three teams being not the kind of teams that can put that pressure on you that Iowa State can, that KU can pass the ball around well, that gave Baylor some fits, that Texas's athletic guards gave Baylor this season, those are the matchups you'd want to have. And I think it does give Baylor a real shot, Paul.
Kendall, I don't know about you. I know the defense has been an issue, but I'm still getting the ringing from the ball bouncing off the rim over and over again from Baylor's shooting the other night, man. Is that just one of those you just crumple it up and throw it away like in the trash can, or is that something that you have any level of concern about offensively? Just how do you kind of view that coming out of a cold shooting night?
I do view that as some concern, Craig. Baylor, if you look at their losses, and almost all of the Big 12 losses, I think a majority of them, they've only had 5 3-point shots. And so between Jacoby Walter and some of Baylor's other 3-point shooters, Jaden Nunn and Ray J. Dennis, those Bears can really have high variance between their best and their worst. So would it shock me if we're all in Phoenix in 3 weeks? No. But it also wouldn't shock me if we're leaving Memphis in a couple days and Baylor's not heading on to L.A. because that 3-point shooting really is variable. Scott Drew mentioned in his press conference after the selection came out that he looked back at some of the shots and thought they were good shots. That's kind of the problem for Baylor. Baylor can make really tough shots, but can also miss easy shots. And so if Baylor ends up getting blown out the gym by New Mexico or by Clemson, I think it'll be one of those nights where they go 5 of 23 from 3.
So you mentioned Caleb Lohner, and I got to tell you, he made a difference. He gave him a spark. He gave him a little, and I hate to say physicality, but he did play well in the amount of minutes and the points and rebounds and whatever else, and he just kind of threw some bodies around along with it. Why? What was the reason to go to him? Was just Scott kind of just frustrated with the way the team was not maybe bodying people up, or what?
I think that's part of it, Smokey. There certainly was a frustration with the way Baylor had defended. I think there was probably some concern about Miro Little as a freshman turning the ball over a lot more. But I think Baylor had looked at the two bigger guy lineups with Jalen Bridges and Caleb Lohner. I'd been told by a staff member that there'd been some internal staff discussions about if they'd missed something with that lineup. And then I thought it was a great sign in the Iowa State game after Caleb passes up so many threes. He takes one in transition, hits it, and I hope that gets his confidence going because I think he's left a lot on the table not taking those threes. I mean, we've all watched him warm up. He makes them in warm-ups, and he's got to get that spacing for Baylor, so hopefully he keeps taking those in the NCAA tournament.
Kendall, what do you think is the deal with their all too frequent slow starts?
Paul, that is the greatest question to assess that I think has no answer because there's not one generic theme to it, right? Like you can kind of just figure out why Baylor's defense isn't good and point to 2 or 3 things and say, yeah, you really can't overcome all of these things at once. It's too many holes to plug on one boat to keep it afloat. But when it comes to the slow starts, I don't really get it, right? They can open in man, they can open in zone, they can open trying to get out and run, they can play more conservatively, they can take only threes, they can pound the ball inside. It just doesn't really seem to matter. I don't know what in the world's going on. Scott Drew's a charismatic guy. They've had guest speakers. They've had the staff speak. They played in the morning. They played at night. They've been in Kansas City. They've been in Waco. I don't know what's going on, but something crazy goes on with these openings. So I even asked them after the game when they had the open locker room. I went guy by guy and was like, know what's going on with these starts? And they're like, oh, it's just something we got to fix. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing of all time. Maybe this weekend they'll get out to a 10-0 run, but I truly have no answer for why they continue to start so against so many teams.
Kendall, I know we've touched on a bit of Baylor here and hit on a couple of other Big 12 schools. I know you were just torn apart by Oklahoma's absence, though, from the NCAA tournament.
God, please don't ever drive through that state. Don't even get close to it. You will not be arrested. You'll just be shot.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he's got the folks riled up there in Norman, Oklahoma. But, yeah, I mean, Kendall, I said it earlier, I mean, they didn't deserve it. But, I mean, you pointed that out as well. Have you got nearly as much flack for that as you had for your football opinions on the Oklahoma Sooners?
I have not, Craig. I take it that Oklahoma football doesn't really have much of a fan base. And, one would also say, well, Oklahoma football have much of a fan base when they continue to not win the conference going forward. I've got my bet I made with OU fans that they'd go 5 years not winning a title. We're now 2 years into that. I don't see their woes changing in the SEC. And I know some people were like, oh, the bid thieves robbed OU. That's really the scam here. OU had no business being the last team out of the field. I thought St. John's had a much better case, but a lot of teams had much better cases because OU did not beat an NCAA tournament team away from Norman. They didn't schedule that well, and then they didn't look that good at the end of the season. I have no idea why people thought they belonged in the tournament. I don't need to, support SEC teams. I don't cover them. I don't watch them, but I've claimed they were frauds all season, and they proved me right, and I hope they have fun not playing in the NIT, which is another rant I could go on that if you're OU and you haven't been in the NCAA tournament now 3 seasons in a row, where do you get off saying you're too good for the NIT? Mm-hmm. Jerome Tang makes an Elite Eight. He's not too good for the NIT. OU, you belong in the NIT. You should play in the NIT. I don't get this presumption that OU basketball is that good. Buddy Hield's not walking through that door. Lon Kruger's not either. And we'll see how long Porter Mosier stays there if he decides to try and look for another job himself.
Okay, for those that don't understand, your rivalry with the entire state of Oklahoma other than Stillwater or Oklahoma State fans around the state. How did this all start again?
Smokey, it did maybe get a little out of control. I would be willing to come to the table with Oklahoma since they're now in a weakened state. But it started out because when OU left the conference, I just mentioned that I thought OU had a real good chance to sort of go through the goals that Nebraska went through because I think Nebraska's problems have been they haven't really had an identity since they've left the Big 12. And I really pointed out that, Oklahoma does not have a God-given right to be Texas or to be Alabama or LSU once they go to the SEC. And that Lincoln Riley, I thought, covered up some of their problems the last few years by having generational talent after talent at quarterback. So that was my whole point. OU fans came after me because they expect that, they're going to be 2000 Oklahoma forever. They have not been. Oklahoma fans have not apologized to me for being wrong. I'm still waiting for my apology. And I think they're going to have many years ahead to apologize to me.
Well, at least you're willing to come to the table with them.
I am, Paul. I'll meet him in the SEC. I'll meet him in the Big 12. But I'm taking it. I'm probably not going to get an apology when OU goes 8-4 in the SEC. I will wonder if I'm talking to Texas A&M or if I'm talking to Oklahoma. But I think they're going to be kind of the same program there.
Now you're going to get me fired up over here. Now I'm going to start fighting back a little bit. No, Kendall, just for your own safety, we'll move on from Oklahoma now. But 8 teams in the field for the Big 12. We kind of touched on Iowa State. Houston's banged up, as you mentioned. We've talked Baylor. What do you feel is, I guess, the of most interest to you, maybe from a Big 12 standpoint from the rest of the field, whether it's a Texas, Kansas, a TCU, so forth, BYU? I think
Craig. I think it's KU. And, was that a tough shot at the Aggies? Maybe. But, the Aggies can buy whatever they want since they just got Nebraska's AD. But to turn to your question directly, Craig, I think KU can really make a run in this tournament. Hunter Dickinson will go. Their first-round matchup, they're freaking out about, well, Stanford takes a lot of threes and we don't stop threes. When the bracket came out, my fiance turned to me and she's like, where is Stanford? And I think that kind of tells you that, if you're KU, you don't lose to Stanford. Soul Self hasn't lost a first-round game in over 20 years. That's not going to happen. And then you get the potential Sweet 16 matchup with Purdue, which we've known how they've done in the NCAA tournament lately. Obviously, Zach Edey's very talented. Their guards are better than last season, but it's kind of I'll believe it when I see it with Purdue. And with how Hunter Dickinson played at Michigan against Zach Edey, I think Kevin McCullough certainly will be back healthy by that second weekend. I think that's the KU team that, with their wins over Connecticut, Tennessee, what they did earlier in the season when they were healthy, and when you have more of a turnaround or more rest you can have going into that second weekend and a shorter turnaround time, I think KU is kind of the sleeper that everybody wants to write off. I mean, I might look like a fool if Colgate goes 17 of 25 from 3, but I think KU is going to beat Purdue, and that the Purdue hype has gotten a little outside of the station.
Yeah, Purdue, I'm not saying it. I don't want to go back to even when they had Gene Cady, but there have been some There have been some moments, man, where they get tightened up a little bit. So if it was a basketball tournament bracket with toothpaste, speaking of Colgate, who would be your number one seed?
Ooh.
I would think it has to be Crest. Doesn't it have to be Crest?
I currently use Sensodyne randomly.
All right.
I guess it's the dark horse winner, but I've used Crest at times. I've used Colgate at times. I don't have a great smile, which tells you that maybe toothpaste is not the problem and that I probably should go to the dentist more. Drank less Coke in my childhood, teenage years, and 20s. But I think, gun to my head for toothpaste, I would die for Crest.
You would die for Crest.
There we go.
All right, there you go. Kendall, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate your time. Enjoy covering the tournament. Hopefully more than just 1 or 2 games, and possibly get the second weekend, which they have not done since the national championship team.
Yeah.
That would be excellent.
That was my bad.
Did you just cut him off?
I did. Sorry.
You had an Oklahoma fan text you and say, get this guy off the air.
It paid me $50. No. No.
All right, Garrett. Number 1 ranked toothpaste if we did a bracket.
Ooh. I'm going to go off the wall. Give me some Aquafresh. Why not?
Aquafresh. Okay.
Yeah. Give me the tri
I'm a little bit different with some of those twisty flavors that have a couple more, like the white, green, whatever. Craig?
But that's Aquafresh, right?
Yeah.
That's most toothpaste at this point, I think.
Yeah, I'm still the old-fashioned straight white. I just kind of like that. I still like that.
I think I have Colgate right now in my – I was just traveling this weekend. I think I've got Colgate in there. I think that's what I've got at home. Maybe I have to change that for this week out of superstition or something. I'll go get a little travel-sized Crest or something for this week. If Baylor wins, they'll switch it back.
I'm a Crest man. 4 out of 5 dentists agree.
There you go.
I don't care what that 5th son of a bitch says.
Yeah.
I'm going with the Crest.
I wonder who he goes with, or he or she.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm Crest. That's what I like.
That's what they give me at the. Here's the other thing. That's what they give me at the dentist. So
yeah, you wonder.
They give me 7 or 8 of them in the bag,
the little tiny ones.
Tiny ones.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe Crest has lobbied dentists. Maybe they're not the best, but I seem to enjoy it, and it works fine for me.
So what's the one that's in the tube that is hard to get the last maybe 5 or 6 ounces out of it? It's a red tube. And the top
Colgate,
is
right?
That's got to be Colgate.
That's Colgate.
Okay, yeah,
that's
red
tube.
Yeah, it's Colgate. The one that I'm because I do Crest, and Crest is just the old regular. It seemed like the old tube. Okay, Sanford, where's it located?
Alabama.
Yep.
Their most famous alum is St. Bobby Bowden.
Yep, unbeaten in the conference. The Southern Conference also. They played one ranked team this year. Were beaten by them. Again, we'll play Kansas. Is that right? And they can shoot some threes, apparently, and KU's been a little bit vulnerable when it comes to taking threes. Garrett, do you have the one, Evan Miyakawa, about Oregon? So there's a graph. Oregon secured the Pac-12 tournament title. They have had to overcome far more injuries this year than anybody else in college basketball. Here's a full graph of minutes per game missed by rotation players for the top 75 teams, and they are right there at the very top.
So I saw the list of teams by conference, and then now we're doing the whole the teams that were selected by conference, and then we're doing the whole looking forward thing. So I saw a bunch of SEC fans were like, well, if we had Texas and we got 9. Well, then if you had Colorado and Arizona, that would put them at 9 as well, right?
10.
Well, no, because you got to take away Texas.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So that would be 9 as well. But that was just something else that I remember seeing earlier today. But yeah, the Evan Miyakawa stuff is red hot right now. As he's got his predictor and all the other machines firing up, or all his all his other formulas firing up right now, and it's very interesting. It's hard to tell from this. I mean, exactly you can't get down to the nitty gritty like you can if it's just on your X page. But he does a lot of good work, and Oregon's certainly part of a great Pac-12 story for Oregon State and Washington State. They went from not looking like they were going to have much of a field to suddenly, because of the way that it worked out, having a little less than a handful of teams, which should only put more money in the pocketbooks of the Beavers and the Cougars, right? So that worked out well for them. But the Pac-12 not heavily represented, although Oregon is a team that is definitely a lot to handle, to Evan's point. So, yeah, that's a team that'll be fun to watch moving forward.
Real quickly, Evan posted this. He does that kill shot ratio, a 10-0 run or better. And if you get whoever has the most 10-0 runs in a basketball game wins 81% of the games in college basketball. Houston is far and away better than anybody at that. Then the next group has, now I want you to think about these teams. St. Mary's, Marquette, UConn, Arizona, BYU, Iowa State, Auburn, North Carolina, and Gonzaga. Some of those, I think 3 or 4 of those teams are in the same region. The ones we talked about were the region that has UConn, Auburn, Illinois. Illinois is not in that group, and also Iowa State. So there we are with that. There's a massive group of teams, mostly streaky, led by, and I've watched them play. They're kind of fun to watch. They score a bunch of points, and Alabama is in that group of mostly streaky.
Yeah, there's actually just news on Alabama and a new extension for Nate Oates. Yeah. He's going to be making a ton of money. The biggest thing to take away from it was basically that his buyout is absurd now after the extension that he just received today. So I'll try and pull it up.
$18 million is what it was.
$18 million for Nate Oates and his buyout. So, yeah, that's pretty good stuff there. But, yeah, Alabama's a fun team to watch. I mean, I've seen a lot of the Big 12 pushback on having the same number of teams as the SEC. But I think when you look at Auburn and you look at Tennessee and you look at Alabama, like, they got some damn good teams now. Like, I don't know about, 1 through 8 that all got selected. But, while you're arguing for Oklahoma as a 9th selection and whether they should have been or not, the SEC's got some teams that can go win the tournament.
Oh, no, they got some. They got some flamethrowers.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just think I don't know that college basketball is anywhere near its biggest era of popularity, or if it will ever even come close to gracing that again, because there's just such a. I was listening to somebody on the way up. I was listening to Dallas radio, and they don't talk college basketball nearly as much as we do, much less the folks who talk college basketball all the time. And so they're what you would call just kind of casual viewers. And I say casual in that not that they follow the sport closely and then don't pay attention to every little aspect, but more so like they're truly casual. Like they don't watch college basketball during the regular season and they show up during tournament time. That's a casual. And they were just talking about like how many current players could you name? And the best they could do was like 5 or 6 apiece, and it was really stressing it to try and get like a 7th name out of there because there's just not a lot of superstars in college basketball right now. Right. So I think that kind of takes away from some of the excitement, but I think when you look at just how many great or really good teams there appear to be, that's going to make for a fun March. Not the starriest of skies or lineups, but a lot of really good teams that should make for some just unpredictability moving forward, more so than we usually get.
I think that NIL and the transfer portal has made college basketball interesting in that regard, and that it's a lot harder to just stamp teams through, round by round, and you don't know because you've got guys, playing like the older teams also is good for college basketball because when you got to see teams, veteran teams play well, I think that was really good. You had that one, the last SEC team was the one and dones, right, of the Kentucky team that he put together, and nobody's been able to do that again. That exact thing again. They tried for a little while, but it was always like, you had 1 or 2 guys that might have been one and dones, but you won because the veterans and the one and dones were just so good they elevated everybody.
Baylor, Kansas, back to back to back, and others too.
Veteran teams that were there, together all the time. It's made it better, and that's why I think it's really foolish to try to mess with that thing right now. Because right now it's as deep and as good as it's been as far as the actual basketball. And when the casuals come around this week, which is when they come around, they'll start seeing that, and you'll start picking off strays more often than you were maybe before, because you can say, I can't wait to watch that guy again, because he's not like, there's a good chance Hunter Dickinson's going to be back at Kansas next year. You get to go watch Hunter Dickinson again at Kansas, so if you're even not a Kansas or a Big 12 fan or whatever, but you liked him in the tournament, well, that's something, I'm going to watch him. I know him. He played
Michigan
well.
fans thought they were too.
He was one of the 6 names they could mention that they knew that play college basketball right now. There was not a lot of others, though, that they were able to put together. But the teams you recognize.
There are people in the chat room that want Kendall on daily.
Hey,
none of them are Oklahoma fans.
You know what? He had a point to what he was saying. I mean, I won't agree with everything that, like, the original stuff that he was saying, not in this interview, but like when he started going out with Oklahoma fans, and I'm looking at it from an Oklahoma fan's perspective, I see where he was coming from, and I don't get really bent out of shape about stuff like that. But I mean, I have some of the same questions that he has, and I'm a fan of them. So I don't go as far as he is. We're like, oh, they're going to be 8-4. Like, I think they could be next year initially. I don't know if that's going to be the case for forever, but he's very valid in some of his thinking. I guess I'll put it that way. I don't agree with him totally, but I agree with him mostly on there's reason to be a little bit concerned or worried about what's upcoming. So
he is not,
and he was dead on about them not competing or not winning the title last year. He was right about that.
No one's apologized to him either. No. It's just it's unbelievable. It's not very nice. When we come back over the weekend, there was a story. Grant Taft is from Snyder, Texas. You know, he's at a college now. Name a stadium after him. We know what he did at Baylor. And a high school where he went, Snyder, Texas, is now going to put his name on the stadium. We'll have a cup that's about a minute long from Grant Taft. Thanks to Lane Pittman, his daughter, for sending the audio clip. We'll have that plus more. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. Drove down Highway 6 the other day. Man, a lot of that construction has cleared out in front of the dealership. It's easier than it has been in a really long time to get over there and not have to worry about so much construction. So what great timing. Not only is it easy to head on over, but they've got great deals going on right now here in the month of March. It's a month of madness, as you all well know. Well, they want to take part in that by bringing you some mad savings all month long. And, oh, yeah, not only is it the month where we typically see the craziness, but it's also their 25th anniversary as well over at Richard Carr Motors. That's right. They're celebrating 25 years of business in Waco, and to celebrate, they're offering those mad savings all month, with right now includes saving thousands on a GMC Sierra SLT crew cab, and qualified buyers can get 1.9% financing for 72 months on the GMC Sierra SLT crew cab. Plus, if you're a military or first responder, you can save an additional $500 on top of the previous savings that I mentioned. And this month, with all this basketball going on, what better time than now to get a 65-inch 4K TV? Well, you can get that by purchasing a car or truck during the anniversary event. A 65-inch 4K TV. Now that is madness. During their 25th anniversary savings event, big savings on over 90 highly inspected used cars and trucks as well. 100% credit approval is always the goal, as they say yes when others say no. So go and take part in the 25th anniversary celebration right now over at Richard Carr, the people who have built a reputation as those you can count on for your automotive needs. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Former executive director, he ran the American Football Coaches Association, obviously Baylor. He played at McMurray in college football, but Grant Taft, who's from Hermleigh, Texas, he played at Snyder High School. Over the weekend, the school board, Snyder ISD, voted to rename what is Tiger Stadium after Grant Taft. It'll be Grant Taft Tiger Stadium, and thanks to Lane Pittman, his daughter, she got this about a 1-minute clip from the legend, the icon, Grant Taft.
Well, I'm frankly very honored. Snyder has been the foundation for every aspect of my life. I was raised there, and every chance we have to go back, we go back. Snyder was a great place for me to grow up in. My coaches had such an impact on me when I was playing for them. Coach Moffitt and all the assistant coaches. I decided that that's what I wanted to do with my life, was to be able to coach, and through coaching, make a difference in the lives of those that I coached. And so that's the foundation of who I became and who I am to this very day. I've spent the latter part of my life coaching the coaches, so to speak, through the American Football Coaches Association. So honored is an inadequate word. It's much more than an honor.
You know, Grant Taft has been honored in every possible way, and now the stadium, McMurray statue, and now it's Grant Taft Tiger Stadium, where he played high school football in Snyder. 90 years old. He was the first guest we ever had on this show.
Hard hat zone still in here when we brought him in almost.
Sat him down here in the middle of the studio.
COVID era.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, but he deserves every honor he gets. He is a gentleman's gentleman and was, he was a transformative coach here at Baylor. I think he's the coach. Like, when you look at how they're winning now, the only belief that they had into the future that they could win at any point until Kim Mulkey won the national championship was they knew that Grant Taft won and won fairly regularly at Baylor. If he had never come along here, I don't know if anything ever changes.
It might have been like Northwestern. Well, because people might have been like Kansas State until Bill Snyder.
Because people sometimes we'll have these sports, but just so that we can have sports and we can get the money, but we don't have any belief that we're ever going to compete. And he of course he did a ton for coaches as well.
He had the great wins against Texas in 74 and 81 Southwest Conference titles. There were some years that were down, but a lot of players produced when they ended up going to the NFL, and not just Mike Singletary, but many, many others. So there you are. Congratulations to a great man, great coach, great person in Grant Taft.
Yeah, always appreciative of him coming in and I guess helping Chris in the studio with doing that first interview, and did many others along the way as well, and always appreciate how helpful his family is as well, and getting him involved and being able to talk to him, and all of that opportunity has been fantastic. So definitely appreciate the whole fam, and Lane especially here. That name a lot when we talk about Grant Taft for good reason. So thanks to her and everybody else in the family for definitely helping him be a kind of a little part of our family on occasion. So that's been great. And what a legend. And he definitely walked so that everybody else after him could run. That's for sure.
Yeah, but Donnell, his wife. I'll tell you one thing about Grant Taft, one story, and I've been fortunate to get to know him pretty well. But we were in the middle of our transition from radio to this show. And I talked to him on the phone. I happened to be driving on the back roads of the airport in Waco, just trying to figure out what's going on. What are we going to do? We kind of had made the decision to do something on YouTube, or I guess at the time, just online. And he and I talked, and he gave me a pep talk when he was known for the greatest of all pep talks, and never forget that. They are an incredible family. Thank you to Grant Taft. Congratulations to Grant Taft. And Lane, again, thank you again for being a part of sending us that audio. That was awesome.
If I do run across him again, personally, I don't want to put him on the spot. He was, when I first had him on my show, when I was in the mornings with Steve Fallon and then without Fallon, years and years ago, he was vehemently against the college football playoff.
Okay.
Could not have been more against it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how the tide has changed when it comes to coaches and that. Of course, that was right before, like, coaches had just started making, like, silly money. Like, they were still making good money, but then it was right before, like, right at the end of his tenure at the Coaches Association was when it was like, oh, wow, these guys are getting paid now. So things changed, and it was different than, his contention was if you took a playoff in, it would kill the bowl system, which so many coaches relied upon to get their contract extension, because if you are making a bowl every year and there's only a few teams that are winning the national title, you had a reasonable expectation to your board of regents to tell them, like, look, we're doing well. Like, it's hard to do this. Like, but if you start putting a playoff in there, then you put another benchmarks on coaches to get there.
If you could right now, would you go back to BCS or polls?
No. I'm
knowing everything that we know.
Yeah, still no.
You still want to play off?
I still want to play.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
I think that Paul. I think all three of our favorite teams when it comes to college football, Oklahoma, Florida State, and Nebraska, probably would have an additional 2 to 4 national titles had there been a playoff during, even if it was a 4-team playoff during any of the times from the time they didn't up until they started, even the BCS.
Bobby Bowden would have never missed it for 15 years.
No. Well, it depends on how many, but even if it was
Osborne
4, he would have made
missed it.
Osborne would have been in it like 5 or 6 more times.
Switzer until his self-destruction would have been in there every year. Yeah,
I think so.
Stoops would have been pretty regular.
Garrett at LSU, they went through that bubble of like just okay.
They wouldn't make it every year, but they would have made it about a decade worth of the last 20 years, probably.
They played Nebraska in 1970, lost like 17-12. I don't remember the next time until it might have been.
Oh, you're talking about that time period. Okay.
Like they went 40 years, 35 years. Would have been Les Miles, or would have been Saban.
I can only go off my lifetime. Yeah, so it'd be like Saban.
1970s?
I mean, Saban won it, and then you had Les start taking over. So
and then
I mean, I think they could have competed whether it would have been a playoff or not, but I'm not going to give up any of the championships.
I mean,
but they went 35 years or so.
Wow, yeah.
33 years.
They won a bunch of 9-win seasons in the 70s. They had, but I mean, I'll put it this way, from 1961 to 1996. In that span,
61 to 96, 35 years or so.
61 to 96, they had one 10-win season.
Yeah, they
had a bunch of 9s. They had a lot of others, too.
That was 1970, right?
It was 1987. They were 10-1 and 1.
What were they in 1970? Like
9-3.
Yep, 9-3, and they played in the Orange Bowl.
And they lost.
And Nebraska won
Charles
their
McClendon.
first under Bob Devaney. All right, when we come back, Niki Lattarulo, she played TV around here in Waco for the longest of time. She's moved around. She's now up in New York, which is where her hometown is, in that area. She covered St. John's for the New York Sports Network. She's next. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. I got a text while I was out of pocket in Florida from David, who's the general sales manager at the dealership. Ram Truck Month going on. Truck enthusiast sees 0% for 72 months, 0% financing for 72 months on a 2024 Ram 1500 Lone Star, or $15,000 off MSRP on the luxurious 2024 Ram 1500 Limited. Strength, performance, luxury, all of the unbeatable savings, and of course the tradition, the excellence, the image, the brand, all of the above when it comes to Ram trucks. Ted Teague, the CEO, general manager of Allen Samuels. AJ was my sales rep, or actually just good friend, when I went to the dealership in the summer of 2020 and bought my car. And it wasn't one of the brands that they sell, because they also have a great variety of pre-owned cars. I bought a Ford Explorer, and I have loved it from day one. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Ram Truck Month going on here in the month of March, Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
She's about to bring some energy because she does that wherever she is. Niki Lattarulo now working up at the New York Sports Network with us on 365 Sports. Wants TV here in the Waco area too. Niki, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. How you doing?
Guys, thank you so much for having me on. I miss everybody. It was like I just heard that whole intro and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard that in so long. It feels so good to talk to you guys.
You too. We really do appreciate you being a part of it. What did I say, Craig? Oh, I thought did I say the name of the? Did I say
SNY?
Yeah.
Yeah, SNY is Sportsnet New York.
Yeah, well, I'm New York Sports Network. Okay, Sports Network New York. Okay. So I thought I saw a clip of Rick Pitino yesterday, pretty late. And I thought he handled the being left out of the tournament about as well as anybody could possibly handle it. What was the reaction you felt as well?
I honestly thought he was going to be more, not mad, but more like heated about it. And I feel like he did handle it very well. I think the situation is the Big East as a whole, I feel like got screwed more than just St. John's.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was like, as a whole, it's frustrating for all the coaches that only 3 teams got in. But St. John's did have a stretch where they didn't play well. They lost a lot of games. So I think that he knows that, like, it was going to be iffy either way based on how they played, like, down the stretch before that 6-game win streak they had. So, I mean, I think the expectations for St. John's this year were really high, and it would have been great if they made it in, but I feel like the success they had at the end just goes to show like the success they will have with Pitino as their head coach.
I know that this for him is not really that big of a bump in the road, but for St. John's as a program that is trying to get back to what they were, which is one of the premier programs in the country, how disappointing was this not to have that shot on the national stage?
I think it's disappointing only because, I mean, I guess I don't remember St. John's ever being a powerhouse, but going to Carnesecca and then going to MSG this season and seeing them play, my dad was saying, like, the energy is what it used to be. Like, New York is behind St. John's my whole lifetime, I haven't seen that. It's just like, I mean, my brother, now he goes to UConn, so obviously he's a UConn fan, but my brother and my dad are like diehard St. John's fans their whole life. So, I mean, those games were never packed. There was never like that same energy. It was just like, okay, this is kind of like a dying program. So the energy was really back and the fans were there and the games were awesome. So I think it would have just been like an incredible first season for him there, for them to make the tournament. I'm not surprised they're not going to the NIT. I feel like he's one of those guys that it's like we're in or we're not. Like, I don't see a reason for us to go to the NIT, so they declined that. But I think it's definitely disappointing just because the fans were getting a taste of what it used to be like. And this team is really, really good, but they are getting a lot of their guys back, so they should be good next year.
St. John's was good with Louis Carnesecca as the head coach back in the day. You're right. That was probably well before you started to kind of focus in on them, but it's great to have you on, Nikki.
Or she was alive.
Yeah, I don't even think it was in my lifetime. I don't even know.
Your lifetime. I love that. So how much of a rock star is he? Even though they don't make the tournament, he's Rick Pitino. What a history, what a career, some ups and some downs. He even mentioned that in his quote, but just what he's meant to that program.
I mean, I've enjoyed covering him. Obviously, I know like the type of coach he is and all the honors he has, and like it's just a really big name to have with a program that's not done so well recently. So it just adds like a special like aura around the team. But I think that like the players, even when they have a bad game or when they, like just fall short, the way that he reacts and like the way that he comes into the press conferences and the things he says, like you could tell they just like really love playing for him and like they trust in what he's saying and what he's doing. So I think he's great for the program. I tried to get to as many games as possible, as many practices, just so I could build the relationship with him. And like he's been nothing but great to us and like he answers the questions well. I mean, I asked him, I don't know if you guys saw the soundbite. I said, what do you guys have to do to beat UConn? He said, we need to have 6 of their players get COVID. And it was just so funny because he was like laughing. But of course, like I posted it on Twitter and everyone was like going crazy. And I was like, obviously he's joking. He's laughing. Like he's good with us in terms of not being too serious. Like it's a interesting coach to cover, especially covering a guy like Scott Drew and then covering Rick Pitino. It's so different.
Nikki, you're a Big East grad yourself. You went to Providence, right?
No, I went to Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Okay, I'm sorry. I was very close.
Yes.
But The Big East did. You mentioned earlier. They did kind of get screwed here in this whole thing. What is the discourse around the conference about how they show that they are a conference that is coming back in basketball? Because if they do expand the tournament, if Greg Sankey gets his way, the Big East is not the conference he's talking about, but that's the league this year that deserved more entries than it got.
Yeah, I think the issue was that UConn was at its best, and then there was teams like DePaul and Georgetown that were at their worst. So it kind of made the middle of the pack this year not as strong as it usually is, because normally the Big East from top to bottom is good. So DePaul having like 2 conference wins, I feel like hurts like the St. John's and the Seton Halls of the conference and like Providence. But I think, I mean, you could tell they all, like, Dan Hurley spoke in his press conference yesterday, and he was like, it's embarrassing that we only have 3 teams in. And then you have Pitino saying, like, we were ranked like 30th in KenPom. Like, what does any of this even mean? So I think, like, the conference as a whole kind of got screwed, but I think it just depends on, like, the year, because there was a lot of bid stealers with like Oregon and NC State that I do think that like Seton Hall would have gotten in. But I was surprised that St. John's wasn't even one of the first 4 out. So honestly, some of it, I'm just like, it's a little bit questionable, but I think it just may be the strength of the Big East this year.
So what's it like to get back to where you're from and work in that area again?
It's kind of crazy because I obviously grew up here watching the New York sports media. All the media members are still the same. So it's like I see someone like Bruce Beck, who's been in the industry my whole life, and I'm like kind of fangirling. So I'm like, wait, I'm like, now I work with him. And then it's just weird because the teams, I'm like fans of the teams. So, like going in the Yankee clubhouse is like, at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like this is literally the Yankee clubhouse. Whereas in Nashville and in Waco, it was like random teams to me. Like I grew to love them and like love all the coaches and the athletes, like great relationships, but it was just like different than now being home and like people I know watching the shows and being around people that I was like fans of. But it's really nice to be home, just to not have to take a plane to come home for things. So I am very lucky, and I feel like very fortunate that I was able to get back to New York this quickly.
You were great at telling your story, and about also when you visited your family, you would always have pictures of your parents and your family, and it was always, were you the one that had the apartment flood?
Oh yeah, that was me. During the ice storm, the Texas ice storm.
Nikki, I will tell you this. I've covered the Cowboys, so when Smokey and I started working together, he, got me involved in covering the Cowboys. I had never done that in my career, and they're my favorite team growing up. I will tell you, there is a line you have to walk, because I know you're a huge Yankee fan, of when you walk, do that and like separate your enthusiasm for it and your fandom from it, which is hard, but you do it. But the other thing is there's going to be a frustration that you have when they don't win, because now you know how the sausage is made, and you're just going to be like, God, I see it. I'm here. They can ask me. I'm right here. Just ask me and I'll fix it for you. That's how you're going to feel all the time.
No, I know. It's also like, it's hard when we do like talk segments. We have like people on that are like opinion based, and I'm just like the neutral host, but I'm like, can I get in here with my thoughts? Like, obviously, I try to throw in every once in a while, because also, I mean, I didn't grow up a Mets fan, but now working at like the Mets network, I also get heated about those things too, because it's like I'm covering it all the time. It's like the only thing we really, like, our number one thing we talk about, same with the Jets. So I'm like, oh God, we need some teams to be good this year, because it's not fun talking about all losing teams all the time. But I think it wears off kind of like the second. So it's like, okay, you interview Aaron Judge once, you're like, oh my God, this is cool. And then you're like, okay, he's normal. It's just a normal dude, like every other athlete. So
the Big East, the Big East, we know about the teams that didn't make it, the ones that were right there on the edge, but also UConn, Marquette, Creighton, all of them are capable of making a run. In fact, all of them are very high seeds, 1, 2, and I think a 3. How good are they in the times you've watched them? Obviously, we've watched them on TV quite a bit. Shaka Smart connection with Texas at Marquette. And Creighton beat Baylor and knocked them out of the tournament last year.
I think UConn is a major powerhouse. I think they're better than they were last year. I think Marquette is good, but I don't think they're at the same level as UConn. I think Creighton is almost a bigger threat for some reason for UConn. Like UConn struggles against Creighton where UConn doesn't struggle against Marquette. But I worked with Hurley at URI. So now I have a really good relationship with him. I do one-on-ones with him every time I see him. Like, great dude, love him. So I'm covering the UConn games. They're in Brooklyn this week, so I'll be at that. And I just think I feel like UConn has a really easy path to the Final Four just because of how good they are. But then I was watching Houston. And I was like, Houston is the team. And then what happened in the Big 12 championship? So honestly, anything could happen any given day. But I do think the Big East has a leg up on a lot of other teams just because like the teams they play against in their conference.
Nick, if you don't mind me asking, because of what we saw when you were here in Waco, then you've moved all the way up now to where you are. When did you realize you could work in a market like the New York market?
I didn't until they hired me. I kind of just like always knew I wanted to get back, but New York is the number one market, so it's kind of out of reach, especially as like a young girl. So I was 21 when I was in Waco, and then I was 24 when I was in Nashville, and then I got this job when I was 25. And I feel like when they reached out for me to audition, I just did it because I was like, okay, it can't hurt. Like I might as well. Like I have nothing to lose. And then when they were like, okay, we want to hire you, then I was like, wait, is this real? Like, how am I getting this job at 25? Like, yeah, I trust that I'm talented enough, and like I know, I know these teams like the back of my hand. But it still was like a little bit shocking at first. And now that I'm here, I feel like it's all the same. No matter what market you're in, you cover the teams the same. Like the way you work and everything is the same. It's just a much bigger audience. But I feel like the work I did in Waco, the hours and like the filming, editing, producing, you guys see like how the local media is. We do everything ourselves. So I just think like that made me such a good reporter that I feel like it's easier to be in a big market when you're doing less.
All right. Well, the last thing I have for you is we also know you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And yet again,
yes, I am.
They won the Super Bowl. Your thoughts about how they got on the road, one in Buffalo, one in Baltimore, ended up winning the Super Bowl. Your thoughts about Mahomes and the Chiefs?
Listen, I had a little bit of doubt this year, not going to lie. I was tweeting all the time, like, this is not their year, this is not their year. I was like I was just like prepared. And then once the playoffs hit, I was like, I have no doubt. Like, this team's winning it all. The Taylor Swift thing, I freaking love because I love Taylor Swift. So I was just like loving every second of it. I think they're a dynasty. Like, I really think they're going to win like 6 out of the next 10 Super Bowls. Like, I just think Patrick Mahomes is so unreal. Like, no one even is at his level. That if they could fix the receiver issue that they had this year, I feel like no one's going to be able to touch them for at least the next 3 years if and when Travis Kelce retires.
And they just picked up Marquise Brown, right, Paul?
Yeah, Hollywood Brown. And
Hollywood
they'll probably
Brown.
draft somebody at 30 or 32 where they are. So.
Yeah, I mean, Andy Reid, can't touch him.
No, he's from a guy that could not quite get it done to now who's won 3 out of 4 and loaded with that quarterback who's very young too. And Patrick Mahomes and the rest of his team re-signed Chris Jones and more. Nikki, thank you very much for the insight on St. John's,
Guys, thank
the Big
you.
East. Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.
Have a good day, everyone. Tell everybody I said hi.
We will. Nikki Lattarulo with us on 365 Sports. So what's SNY?
Sports Network New York.
I always thought, what was the difference between that and me saying the New York?
Backwards.
Well, if you're doing initials, the New York Sports Network would be NYSN, not SNY.
Yeah.
For one. So, I don't know. I like getting people's names right and where they work right.
I got the name.
No,
Yeah,
you do.
You got the name. You did that.
I'm a stickler for that. It's like when I see a misspelling or something, it pops out to me. So, just wanted to get that right there. And I don't know. She could have never even thought twice about it when hearing it, but I just noticed that initially. So
You know, the hardest I've ever bombed doing comedy, improv, or stand-up was, and now granted, part of this was the thing, but Moody High School was having a benefit, of which we were not the highlight, but they hired us and paid us to come out and do improv. And the guy got up on stage, of which we were not allowed to get on because there's a band coming on after to raffle off a gun, by the way. So we weren't even close to the top
Texas,
thing.
baby. Hell yeah.
But we were in the cafetorium there, and the guy got our name wrong. Like he just got, he's like, and now the Theater of Improv team of Central Texas, in which none of it was right. And so from that moment on, there were 5 of us there. It was in all of our heads. And not only that, we're doing it while they saw the food line going. So I'm trying to okay, I'm on a submarine. I'm trying to make this stuff up. And there's guys like, Clem, how the hell are you?
Yeah, it sounds like
Bernice, why don't you marry this ugly son of a gun? Oh, my God. And you're like, all right, well, that's it. So, but yeah.
Look, it's just like my grandmother's mashed potatoes and gravy.
Yeah, it's so got in my head that the whole time I was just like, all right, I mean, I guess.
How do you spell, how do you mispronounce what is about one of the most simple names, Paul Catalina?
Well, it was the group. They just messed the group name up.
Oh, okay.
Because then we have to go and explain what we do.
Okay.
So if he just said, here it is, then we had to spend the first couple minutes saying, have you guys ever seen an improv show? And in Moody, Texas, the answer is no.
Yeah, I did. That's not where I would go for improv. All due respect to Moody, but that's not where you would expect it to be.
I initially said no, and then they said, "Hey, you want to make $100?" And I was like,
"Yeah,
get $100 bucks."
Got to do what you got to do." But it is Sportsnet New York. I just went and double checked it. So to your point, you were close enough, but it would be the same as saying, let's welcome Lattarulo Nikki to the show. It's like that's the equivalent of it.
Okay, who made the bigger mistake? Me on her title of where she works, or Paul on Providence and Seton Hall?
In Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
I don't know.
She's a proud Rhode Island girl.
Yeah, that's a tough split. That's a tough split there.
Rhode Island basketball, if I remember correctly, had a couple of guys in one team went to the NBA. I think that Penders was the coach at that time. Tom Penders, who eventually had the nice run at Texas and then Houston, too. All right, 524. We have dug into the NCAA tournament about as much as we possibly can, but there's always something else to look at. Let's look at a couple of other notes going on in sports. Chat room.
By the way, I don't know. I haven't looked around the rest of the schedule just yet, but spring football starting as well. And I am very excited about that. I don't know about everybody else out there. I know I don't want to overblow the importance of spring football and make it seem like it's a huge deal or bigger than it is. But I don't know about y'all folks out there. I am fired up to see some football headlines and just see the interesting things that come out of all these various camps. Over the next month month to 6 weeks or so. So yeah, that's starting up tomorrow here and all over elsewhere as well. So we're gonna have plenty of that coming your way. I think it's fair to say, little spring check-ins and whatnot on the horizon. So looking forward to the mix mash of that in March Madness.
Well, I just put this up in the chat room. Right now, we'll come back with your questions or your comments. What is the biggest storyline for the favorite college football team you follow? What is the biggest storyline for you on what favorite team you follow, whoever it might be? 365 Sports every afternoon, 3 until 6. If you haven't told somebody about us, please do. Like and subscribe. We appreciate that. This is 365 Sports.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Wood
Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marcos Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marcos Pizza, the fastest growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marcos Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Every program, fan base, they have the top 1 or 2 storylines. Could be a new coach like Willie Fritz at Houston. It could be a quarterback battle. Could be a transfer player who's come in that might help them like ramp up quite a bit of productivity at a certain position. What it might be. JG, again, I'll bring him up because his name's the first one on this particular part of the chat. Storyline. Who was the starting quarterback for Willie Fritz, given Donovan Smith got hurt and missed spring practice?
Yeah, I still think it's Donovan Smith. But, yeah, that's something with a new coach that you always look around and you wonder what kind of changes are going to be made. But, yeah, I think it's definitely going to be Donovan Smith. But, Houston with Willie Fritz now there, it just felt like there was a dark cloud sort of hanging over them with Dana Holgorsen for a couple of years. And obviously, last year you had a couple moments like nearly beating Texas, beating Baylor in a dramatic game in Waco, but a lot of other moments that weren't so great. So I'm excited to see what he can do for a Donovan Smith. Need to shape up and brush up. And reminding myself now with spring, I know. And here's the deal: spring started for some schools, but for the bulk of schools, it's starting like about right now in the Big 12 and beyond. There's some that have started like the last couple of weeks. I think Hawaii's actually like done already, but most everybody else has started to get started by this time. But that means like brushing up on rosters and then brushing up on them again when people inevitably hit the transfer portal here in a few weeks. So, but Houston's going to be a lot of fun with Willie Fritz. I can't wait, but I do think it'll be Donovan Smith.
Paxton, for me, it's how the new incoming wide receivers replace what left.
I think there'll be maybe a slight drop off because I think who they're losing, especially like when you lose Mitchell, Worthy, and Sanders, and those are 3 probably top 50 picks in the draft. Even though you've got some really good players coming in, Isaiah Bond is really, really fantastic and was just starting to show what he was at the end of last year for Alabama. Matthew Golden's really good. I think you're going to have a bit of a slight drop-off, but I do think the way that offense runs, it's going to be the same thing we saw. Like, okay, how does it work from Jonathan Brooks to Cedric Baxter? It doesn't really matter if everything's humming along, and if they still have the offensive line that they had.
Who's the kid from Houston? Is it
Golden? Matthew Golden.
No, I'm talking about the running back. Blue. Yeah.
So if you have those guys rolling along, I don't think it's going to matter that much. It's just about Quinn Ewers getting on the same kind of page he was with the other guys. And he did a really good job with A.D. Mitchell, who was a transfer, adjusting to that. So, I don't think there should be too much worry other than Matthew Golden was not healthy last year, so you want to make sure he's healthy. And then just fitting everybody in where they go.
Yeah, and I didn't finish up quite, but, I mean, There's going to be fun for Willie Fritz to see just his group of quarterbacks without having your guy there, Smith. You can kind of just not worry about him, get him healed up, and just roll with a brand new slate. So I think that's going to be exciting. But yeah, hopefully Donovan Smith doesn't have any, lingering effects or anything like that. But he's a big, tough guy. I think he'll be just fine and be the guy when the time comes. But for Texas, I think they're addressing their holes about as well as anybody possibly could when you're losing A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and company, and you're like, oh, let's go grab Matthew Golden. Let's go grab Isaiah Bond.
Yeah.
Let's go grab. It's a great platform to have, to be able to just kind of go and pick guys and pick such top-notch guys and go and replace other top-notch guys. Now, having said that, I don't think that just because you grab a 4-star wide receiver means he automatically replaces that 4-star wide receiver and so on and so forth. Who's going to be the guy to make the big catches in crunch time like A.D. Mitchell did time and time again when they most needed it? Can other guys take the top off the way and Xavier Worthy could? Sure, the numbers say so, and they should be able to. But, yeah, that's going to be an exciting amount of turnover for that group and a lot of new names to get to know that are big-time playmakers. So, yeah, that'll be something for sure for Texas.
And John Tate Cook in year 2.
Is he blow up now and become the guy everybody expected, and they've got others as well. But
Ryan Wingo coming in.
He got a little bit of taste of it, yeah. Another 5-star dude.
Yeah.
Medal. Spencer Danielson's turnaround Boise State next year. He was brilliant as the interim.
You know what? Andy Avalos was obviously a miss, and Ashton Jeanty had an incredible year despite that. Obviously, Taylor Green goes to Arkansas now, but I think Boise's going to be in good hands. To your point, they finished really strong. Clearly, they made the right move at the time, and were able to end on a better note than it looked like at one point earlier in the season they were going to end on. So, yeah, now taking over the reins and getting into the thick of things with the new era, I think, that's obviously a big storyline to watch. So, yeah, let's see what Spencer Danielson can do with that very proud program in Boise State.
And Malachi Nelson coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And Jonty's coming back.
Yeah. So, I
don't think there's a bigger proponent, not fan, than you are of Jonte. Because and by the way, basically all but helped him get on the ballot to be a finalist for the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award, because a lot of people just weren't paying attention to the raw facts of who he was and what he had done.
I don't know. I'm a fan to the extent that I'm a fan of anybody. He's definitely a guy that I'm a fan of. Yeah. But I'm just fair is what it is. And I fought for him, Ashton Jeanty, because he was very deserving of being a finalist. If you looked at his numbers, he was, depending on what category, number 2 or number 3 amongst running backs in all of the big categories. And you had like all-purpose yards, for example. The only guy that was above him on average was Ollie Gordon. And Ollie Gordon was there, and there was other guys that were being mentioned because they played at bigger schools. And I feel like Ashton was getting the raw end of the deal in some voters' minds because he played at Boise State and not at Arkansas or Texas or TCU or something. So, yeah, I fought for him and deserved it. He deserved it. The numbers were the resume, and that's all I went off of. Nothing else, and he deserved that spot. So, yeah, I fought for him, and I'm excited that he's coming back to Boise. Now, there's still a few months to go, but he made his declaration that he was coming back right after the season wrapped up, and said it on our show, and so I'm excited to see what that looks like.
UW fan, Jim, what a year it was for the Huskies, and, of course, so many changes with the board because of Saban and the coaching staff, and now a couple of them with the Seahawks, et cetera. Excited to play I love this part of it. This is the one thing about the realignment. There's a lot of things about realignment people love or don't like. Excited to play a Big Ten schedule, see my dogs, Washington, play in some historic venues.
Yeah, I'm sure it is exciting for them. Now, look, their roster is going to be probably the most fluid of any top team in the whole country because they had a ton of guys going out the door. Like if Kalen DeBoer was back, he was going to have to do a lot of roster work because they had a lot of guys going out the door to the NFL as it stands. Now, with all of this going on, it's going to be very interesting with them. By the way, Silas Bolden also transferred in from Oregon State. So that's another Texas wide receiver.
That's right.
Paxton brought up. So
Silas Bolden.
They're set up well at that position. They're not. They're probably not going to miss too much of a beat. But
that's one of those where so long as Sark's head coach, you're going to have your offensive weapons. That's never going to be a concern. Quarterback, receiver, running back, so on and so forth. But yeah, I forgot about Silas Red. That's what I was saying about needing to brush up on rosters. As spring ball gets rolling because of the portal, and then again, that's why I mentioned then again right afterwards because then inevitably inevitably guys leave. But, yeah, Silas Bolden. I wonder with all the numbers, like who's going to be the dude? Isaiah Nayor. Who's going to be the guy who's a big-time potential playmaker, but then for injuries or just the depth chart isn't able to make as much of a splash, or maybe they don't have that situation, but that was something I was definitely wrong about. I thought Isaiah Nayor was going to have a much bigger impact at Texas than he ended up having for health reasons in part, and also just the fact that you had all of the other guys that you had, you didn't necessarily even need him that much, but yeah, that's another
riches,
guy.
Man, I'm talking about they got some dudes who can go. Also, Dustin Archambault, I hope Oklahoma State has a real spring game. Then all of a sudden we brought up Genty and Metal. Holy crap, when does the transfer portal close? It's closed now. Yeah. It's going to open up again in about a month and a half or so.
May, right at the end of April, early May, that's when it does.
So I'm glad you brought up Silas Bolden. Glad to bring Bolden. Yes, it's a hell of a pickup too. Mike, they loaded up their cupboard with all sorts of wide receivers. JG, does Alabama win double-digit games next year?
I want to go back for real quick and keep hold on that. But I will say I am, as an OU fan, looking forward to them traveling and playing all these new schools on the road. I do think that's going to be really cool. So to the point about Texas and being able to do that is going to be a lot of fun and maybe the most interesting storyline for both those programs. Certainly being in that new conference is right up there amongst the top storylines. So what was it we just touched on? But because I think that's going to be awesome.
Alabama double-digit wins with DeBoer's first year.
Yeah, those road trips are going to be awesome. But Alabama double-digit wins in DeBoer's first year. Oh, man. It's Alabama, so I sort of default, but now I have to look at their schedule.
I've got it here, Chris.
Yeah, I've got to look at the schedule.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give them Western Kentucky, South Florida, even Wisconsin on the road.
That's a great non-con, though. We got Fickle in year 2. It's in Madison.
USF has a really good quarterback, too, coming back.
USF's,
I'm going to give them Vanderbilt. I'm going to give them South Carolina. That gets them to 5. And I'm going to give them Mercer at 6. Then after that, so that's 6 of them. So they've got to find 4 out of.
Remember early on in Saban's first run at Alabama, they lost to UL Monroe. You just never know.
Remember USF almost beat Alabama last year.
Yeah, with Golich. Yeah,
out of Georgia, Tennessee, Mizzou, LSU, Oklahoma, and Auburn.
6 games they have to win.
4 of them.
Whoa! I'm gonna.
And look, and I say Auburn.
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no, too.
I put Auburn on that list because, and I wouldn't normally. I think Hugh Freeze will have them going. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, if it's going to be Peyton Thorne again. But Peyton Thorne almost beat Alabama last year. It took a miracle play to Isaiah Bond, who's not there anymore, to win that game for Alabama. And, but... we don't know what Oklahoma is really going to be, but we think they're going to be pretty good. LSU probably going to be pretty good. I mean, here's
the thing, Paul. It's at Oklahoma. It's at Tennessee. It's at LSU. It's at Wisconsin. I mean, those are 4 massive road games. Plus Georgia at home, Mizzou at home, Auburn at home. I'm going to say no. Yeah,
that means they have to go
9-3 at best.
They have to go. Well, 9-3 plus a bowl game makes it 10 or a playoff.
I think we gotta get rid of the postseason.
JG, clarify whether you mean regular season 10 wins or not.
And I got to tell you too, they could be 8-4, and it might not matter if you want to count the bowl game, JG, or not. But first glance, I'm gonna say no because that's just a really tough schedule. Even if Saban was coming back, but much less a new coach and a whole new kind of approach to things, and some road games you're Knoxville, Baton Rouge, Norman, Madison. I mean, that right there, that's 4 games. I'm not even touching on the home games.
Fickle.
Yeah,
so
that's going to be tough.
I think the only SEC school with a more challenging schedule than that is probably Florida.
Yeah. All right, from Dan, my biggest question is which G5 makes the college football playoff, which Big 12, and will they be able to make some noise when they get there?
Yeah, the G5s, the shakeup, right? With Willie Fritz now leaving Tulane. That's a shakeup amongst the G5 ranks. And then last year we saw Liberty with Jamie Chadwell and Caden Salter there, quarterback. And that was a great regular season run against some very lackluster scheduling, quite frankly. And then we saw what happened in the bowl game. I think that might ding Liberty, if there's a situation that presents itself where the schedule will have to come into play, which won't be new territory for Ian McCall, schedule criticism. But, best. I'd have to sit and kind of think on that a little bit.
Well, I think which team comes out of the Big 12, I think it's whoever wins the Sunflower Showdown. I do. I think.
Okay.
I think it's Kansas or Kansas State right now. And I know Oklahoma State fans are going to get mad at me again. I just don't have a whole lot of faith in Alan Bowman. That's just where I'm at, as I do in a healthy Jalen Daniels or Avery Johnson, who I think is going to be the most fun guy to watch in the league. That's where I'm leaning right now. But if you told me Utah was going to be there, I wouldn't say no either. But
go ahead.
As far as the group of 5, SMU, I think.
They're in the ACC.
They're in the ACC.
I thought the same thing.
Well, that's the group of 5, Paul.
That's supposed to be the group of 5.
Roll Tide.
You got to remember who's still in the G5 at this point.
I mean, isn't that amazing, though?
Boise
that
State could.
It's not that you didn't know that, because isn't that amazing that we go straight to SMU, and then now they're a part of the ACC?
I know. I'm going to see them play this year, because FSU's playing there. But, maybe Boise State if Malachi Nelson really hits.
Like Troy or something like that.
Troy,
I don't know. I'd have to
Tulane with John Summerall.
I said Tulane should still be included. I don't know why I'm negating it. With John Summerall especially, that's a really good hire. So, that with what he did – and I think of Troy. Tulane should definitely still be in the conversation. I need to brush up on what all personnel they've got back again. That's what this time is for. But, I don't know what I'm thinking just because Willie left. They made a great hire. So Tulane could very well be in the conversation. And, now SMU is no longer a part of the equation. So that's one less team that you're all that concerned with. So that's – my bad, Green Wave folks, for doubting you just because of Fritz.
By the way, Utah does play one of those 2 schools you mentioned that might play for the title. Iowa State, they have them at home late November. They do not have K-State on their schedule, which they might in the Big 12 championship game if they end up getting there.
I didn't answer the Big 12 part. Was it about just who wins? Was that the question?
Who represents the Big 12? Paul mentioned Iowa State, K-State.
Yeah, I think it's Utah right now. I think it's Utah based on the sturdiness of Cam Rising coming back, barring his health. I just think Kyle Whittingham's a great coach. I don't think that they're just going to run roughshod like some of their fan base online seems to think, and I know some of that's just kind of playing around as well. But I think Iowa State's definitely a team to reckon with. Kansas, I think they're going to be really good because I think that even losing Andy Kotelnicki, bringing in Jeff Grimes, who's like a wide zone guy that doesn't make you miss that much of a beat. But Kotelnicki's also a very good play caller. But still, though, you have a lot of the other stuff coming back. You do lose some personnel. K-State with Avery Johnson is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a really interesting race. But I default to Utah.
I mean, what Kansas, West Virginia? By the way, UW fan guys, don't forget Oregon State is a G5.
That's a great point. I mean, technically, I guess they would be. If you're going to go, it's a P4 world now. Yeah, that would be a team that's considered G5. Yeah, we're going to have to really rewire our brains, aren't we?
But they lost both their quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. They lost DJU, they lost the coach, they lost Aiden Childs, they lost Silas Bolden. Now Martinez comes back.
Damian Martinez.
Damian Martinez is back, so that's good. But they do have a little bit more to build back there at Oregon State. And look, they've got the 2 years of the financial bubble before it pops. Mm-hmm. But that's a stretch for me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely with all the things that you mentioned. Damian Martinez is a really good back, though. So that's a piece you feel really solid and has proven himself now for a while. But, they do lose a lot, starting with head coach Jonathan Smith there now at Michigan State. But, that's a great reminder, though. It is, because, I had to remind him about SMU. Now you got to remind yourself of, technically, I guess, Wazoo and Oregon State are, I guess G5 considered. And that's just going to have to just rewire my brain to think about who else. SMU in the ACC.
Appalachian State's a G5. Are they a G5?
Yeah, they've always been.
They would be. Yeah, they're going to be that way. Well, you never know, Blink, and it might change. All right, there we are. Good. It's kind of fun to go through that a little bit. Craig brought the spring drills up. Baylor starts tomorrow. We'll have some coverage from that, of course, on and off over the next, up until their spring game in April. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and the top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
In honor of Texas Beef House, this is the top 5 teams that have beef with the selection committee. And we're going to go levels of beef. All the way up the top. So, hamburger level beef. This is run-of-the-mill hamburger.
Farm-raised.
Well, no, this
is getting too complicated.
We're not getting to them yet.
Okay.
We're gonna build to them.
Okay, hamburger's spelled wrong. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like Craig. How do you misspell
hamburger?
Yeah. Hamburger level pit.
Oh my God.
They had a good enough season where their record considers them in the tournament, but they definitely hamburgers. Spelled wrong. We're going to move on from this one really fast.
Go!
Hamburger level pit. They had the 343rd ranked schedule.
They're gone. Bye.
They're gone. Bye. Number 4, filet mignon level.
Okay.
Seton Hall. A good season in the Big East. Probably got nabbed by a bid stealer themselves. But again, also had a bit of a bumpy stretch along the way. So they're the filet mignon level. They have a little bit more beef, a little higher quality beef, but not all the way.
Filet mignon's pretty good.
Pretty good, though. I mean, we're going up, though.
Yeah. With bacon wrap?
Yeah, you can bacon wrap it.
Getting so into the details of
I know, it's the same thing. Yeah,
like it's not. They're not going to hand it to us here in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does sound good though. Here at the end of the show.
Number 3, bone and ribeye level.
That's as good as it gets.
Oklahoma, and I put them above Seton Hall because even though they were 4-12 against Quad 1, they did play in the best conference in the country in the Big 12. Now I do think that. This is Oklahoma's bid was stolen right out from them by NC State. I think that's the one because you're looking at P4 to P4 comparison there. NC State comes in, has no business winning the ACC tournament. Also tells you that the ACC Pitt, we're looking at you. Virginia also should not be in this thing, and that's who really Pitt should be mad at. But that's what happened. It shows you where the ACC is when it comes to basketball this year as well.
Yeah, and going back to Seton Hall, because we
kind of ran through them.
Yeah, I think Shaheen Holloway might have had one of the most impassioned and angry responses of any coaches, and rightfully so. Like he had a reason to be obviously to have beef and be upset, but I just thought that you could tell he really was upset. But with Oklahoma, I mean, look, you can say it was a bid steal or whatever you want to put it as, it doesn't really matter. Like they had an opportunity in the Big 12 tournament to go and make a bit more noise, and they basically decided to rest on their laurels and rest guys.
They lost 6 of their last 8 games.
And they were terrible down the stretch. So when you're terrible down the stretch and then you don't do anything in the tournament and you basically just, I guess, hope for the fact that you're going to get the benefit of the doubt and that craziness doesn't ensue and nobody's stealing bids, well, if that were to happen, then you're probably still in there. But all those things did not work in their favor. So, I don't know that they got too much of a gripe when all is said and done, really.
The game that came back to hurt them the most was the home game against Texas. They also lost at UCF. But their last 6 games they lost, listen to this. TCU tournament team, KU, they were 3rd at that time. They lost to Texas. They lost to Tech, Baylor, Iowa State, Houston. I mean, they lost. All these are tournament teams, so, except the UCF game. And then, of course, I mentioned they lost at home to Texas, and that hurt them too.
Number 2, there's only one level higher than this, the Wagyu level.
Look at the marbling on that.
Yeah, just fantastic marbling. I'm not sure you're going to be able to tell the difference between this one and the next one. And the only reason I say this is because I can mostly afford Wagyu beef, especially from the fine folks at Texas Beef House who are
.com.
But St. John's really had a good season. You know, like you heard Nikki say, they had their stretch in the middle of the year where they didn't. But I do think the Big East as a conference got screwed. This one, I think with Brooke Pitino trying to reestablish them because they were one of the basketball teams. Heck, they were coming to America, for God's sakes. But St. John's is a team in the basketball mecca of the world in New York City that, really thought that this was going to kind of reignite the Big East this year, and maybe it's next year that they do. But I do think that they have maybe the second most level of beef of everybody.
Yeah, it's great, and that's a good looking ribeye.
Yeah, and the only one that's higher than that would be number 1, Kobe level beef. Indiana State was number 28 in the net and got their bid stolen by someone like Long Beach State, which sucks for them. But really, I think their beef, Indiana State needs to be the poster child for if you do expand the tournament, expand it so that Indiana States can get in, not so that Oklahoma's and Pitts can get in. That's what you need to do.
I agree. I
if
agree.
you're going to expand it, it has to be for these guys.
They're not going to be.
Not for the big boys. That's where Greg Sankey is so dead wrong on this. And if you're going to do it, put more teams in that are going to drive the first weekend. And I don't think he realizes or he's ignoring because he doesn't care. And his argument is the reason that people watch the first weekend so much and the reason that TV value is so much is not because of Duke and Kansas and Kentucky in the first weekend. No. That's why it is in the last weekend. But and sometimes the last weekend is true. Yeah. But the reason it's valuable in the first weekend when there's so many games, and some of them might be blowouts, is the fact that sometimes, the more times than not, the teams with that big number in front of them beat the teams with a little number. And the teams with a big number in front of them are not usually the big boys. Yeah. That's why people watch that first weekend. And even that's why they do. And if you take them out, you're taking them out what makes it most beautiful.
Yeah, otherwise it's like a preseason, like invitational or just a conference tournament.
Who cares about wins and losses and resumes when you can just get TV ratings? Mm-hmm. That's what we're all here for, the big ratings on television.
Greg Sankey may be a really good dude. I've never seen him really ever spoken to him, other I've seen him on TV, whatever. But, no matter what, sometimes you may just all of a sudden go to a level where you start to believe yourself a little bit too much and you lose focus. But he doesn't have to care.
No, he doesn't, and that's his prerogative, and we don't necessarily have to disagree with everything he says. I do think the overall kind of approach and the way it's been positioned at least comes across, if that's not his intention, to look like a money-hungry kind of destroyer of the infrastructure, then they need to redo the messaging the last few weeks. But, I mean, we'll see what this all looks like on the other side and whether or not it's actually good for the greater good in the game of college basketball, college football, all these changes that are being bandied about. He's certainly not the only guy. I don't want to start singling him out as the big, bad evil when, in fact, he may not be as evil because it's the Big Ten commissioners pushing some of this, or it's the ESPN executives pushing some of this, or the Fox executives, or whoever. It's not a one-man show. He's just been outspoken, and sometimes you're outspoken and you get the backlash for it. And I think that's some of what he's getting. But I also do think that anybody thinking that the greater good was really in mind were fooling themselves to begin with, because this is a greedy institution, college athletics at its core, and that's what it is. It's about making money, and if you could put more teams in and make more money, that's what certain people are going to try to do.
Whatever they end up doing, I just hope to God in 5 or 10 years we still have that atmosphere, tradition, the rivalries, the pageantry, and much more. And who knows, maybe it gets better. I don't know. All right, for Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie, Levi Caraway. Hey, over the weekend, Baylor winning 2 games against Texas Tech in baseball. That was a nice surprise. For Craig Smoak and for Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. Every weekday, 3 to 6, Paul's triple option, 1 until 2. And tonight at 10:30 on the local CW 365 Sports Tonight. For our great sponsors and you, our audience, we love you. Thank you. Good night.